We don't have money because we have an unemployed person in this house. My mother-in-law spat out, glaring at me. My husband and father-in-law scolded her, but her anger only intensified. It's because we have a freeloader here that we're broke. Do you realize being a stay-at-home wife is just being unemployed? She accused me. I was more fed up with my mother-in-law than sad or angry. It had been a year since I moved in with my in-laws, and she had called me unemployed many times before. She just couldn't stand the fact that I was a stay-at-home wife. However, today she seemed to have had an unpleasant experience outside and lashed out at me even more persistently. Then, she dropped a bombshell. Someone like you doesn't deserve my precious son. The unemployed should just leave. My husband and father-in-law were shocked, not expecting her to go as far as telling me to leave. As they were about to yell at her, I cheerfully responded. Yes, gladly. With a big smile as if I were a pub server, I left her speechless. My husband and father-in-law wore expressions of astonishment. I immediately began preparing to leave the house. I also prepared divorce papers and had my husband sign them. Mother-in-law, I'll submit this divorce form to the city hall. Goodbye, I said, and as I left my in-laws' home, I could hear my mother-in-law's loud laughter from inside. Imagining what would happen next, I couldn't help but smile. You're wrong if you think things will go your way, I murmured as I started walking. My name is Lisa. I'm 30 years old. Ever since I was young, I loved movies and dramas, and after graduating high school, I enrolled in a film school. There, I learned video editing skills and managed to get a job at an advertising agency after graduation. Work was tough, but I enjoyed every day. One day, through work, I met my now husband, Ken. Ken was 2 years older than me, with a generous and attractive aura. We both loved cameras and knew a lot about video editing, so we hit it off immediately. Our relationship evolved from good friends to lovers without either of us explicitly asking. After several years of dating smoothly, one day came. Ken looked at me with a seriousness I had never seen before and said, Lisa, I'm thinking of going back to my hometown to become an independent photographer. Really? You've decided to go independent? I had heard from Ken before that he wanted to eventually return to his hometown and start his own business. Yeah. And I want you to come with me. I want you to marry me. Ken said, his serious gaze turning a bit anxious. Of course. I'd be delighted. I answered with my biggest smile. Since Ken's hometown was in another state, I would have to quit my current job. Although I felt sad about leaving my job, my desire to support Ken's independence was stronger. More than anything, I understood that being with Ken was my greatest happiness. Thus, Ken and I decided to get married, and I quit my job to become a full-time housewife. Ken started working hard every day as an independent photographer. We rented an apartment near his parents' place and lived together while saving money to eventually buy our own home. Even though we lived modestly, our days were peaceful and serene. However, it wasn't long before my mother-in-law suggested we move in with them. Hey, Lisa and Ken. You're saving up to build your own home, right? Then, why not live with us? It won't cost you rent. There's no need for the two of you to live in an apartment by yourselves. Come live with us, she said with a smile. Since we had a reasonably good relationship with my in-laws, I was grateful for the offer. However, the idea of moving in together was a bit daunting, and I couldn't immediately agree. I had heard from a friend about their failed experience living with in-laws. It ended in divorce because they couldn't get along with their mother-in-law. Because of this, I wasn't very enthusiastic about my mother-in-law's suggestion. Your offer is, well, appreciated. But, we're still newlyweds, and moving in right away seems a bit much. Besides, both you and Dad are still healthy and don't need care, so there's no reason for us to live together. Ken said, gently declining on my behalf. However, my mother-in-law didn't back down and kept bringing up the idea of living together. I think it would be so fun to live together every day. I dream about it every night, the four of us enjoying dinner together. When will it become a reality? Come on, let's live together soon. Make my dream come true. Hearing this repeatedly made me feel guilty for always refusing, and eventually, we agreed to move in with them. Then, my mother-in-law's eyes sparkled with joy, and she was very pleased. Really? I'm so happy. Lisa, I'm sure we will get along well. We'll share the household chores and help each other out. I look forward to it, thank you. Seeing how happy my mother-in-law was made me feel good about deciding to live together. After we decided to move in, my mother-in-law, who couldn't wait for us to live together, often called me. Your room will be on the second floor, in the corner. It gets great sunlight and is just perfect. I've cleaned it thoroughly for you. Wow, thank you so much. As the move-in date approached, my mother-in-law was very kind to me, and my anxiety gradually disappeared. However, one thing that bothered me was how much my mother-in-law adored Ken. It's natural for a mother to love her son, but sometimes I thought she was a bit overprotective. Hey Lisa, what's for dinner tonight? Ken works hard every day, so make sure he eats something nutritious. But don't just feed him meat all the time. It has to be balanced. Make sure you support Ken properly. So, what's the menu for tonight? Tell me quickly. Being bombarded like this made me feel a slight discomfort. Moreover, my mother-in-law often said, I can't wait to live with Ken. It made me wonder if she wanted to live with everyone or just with Ken. However, I told myself it was natural for a mother to want to be with her son and tried not to worry about it too much. Besides, there was nothing else about my mother-in-law that concerned me, so I focused on preparing for the move. And as planned, we started living with my in-laws. At first, sharing household chores with my mother-in-law, we lived peacefully. But soon, my mother-in-law showed her true colors when Ken and my father-in-law were at work, leaving just the two of us at home. Lisa, how long are you going to hang the laundry? You're so slow. Can't you move any quicker? Once you're done with that, hurry up and finish the dishes. Actually, I'm leaving all the household chores to you today. You're unemployed, so you must have plenty of time, right? Must be nice being unemployed. Make sure you clean thoroughly. Got it. My mother-in-law rattled off in a rough tone I had never heard before. Are you going out somewhere, mother-in-law? I was very surprised, but tried to remain calm and asked. Yes. Unlike you, an unemployed person, I'm busy. I'm a career woman, you know. I live my life being busy with all sorts of things every day. My mother-in-law boasted proudly. Indeed, I had heard that she was a career woman. She used to work for a major trading company, seemingly bustling with work. But that was up until 2 years ago. My mother-in-law is currently 62 and retired at 60, so now she's a full-time housewife. Yet, she mocks me for being unemployed, which makes me wonder what she's thinking. I was puzzled and ended up staying silent. Then, my mother-in-law, seemingly irritated, told me. What are you zoning out for? Get moving! Hurry up and finish cleaning the floor. Yes. I managed to say, overwhelmed by her presence, and started doing the housework as she commanded. My mother-in-law constantly criticized the way I did the housework, making me redo the cleaning multiple times. This is totally unacceptable. You can't say you've cleaned with that kind of effort. Here, do it again, please. After thoroughly tormenting me to her satisfaction, she left the house with a high-end bag in hand. Alone in the house, I was stunned. From then on, my mother-in-law frequently dumped housework and cleaning tasks on me. She would push these chores onto me and then leave the house dressed in expensive clothes and bags, returning with loads of shopping bags. In front of Ken and my father-in-law, she played the part of a good wife and mother. I considered telling Ken and my father-in-law about how she was treating me. However, I didn't want to upset them, so I found it hard to bring up her true nature. Gradually, my mother-in-law began to openly assign me chores in front of my husband and father-in-law. Ken would often reprimand her. Mom, why do you keep making Lisa do all the housework? We agreed to share the chores. Oh, Ken, don't be so angry. After all, Lisa isn't working. It's only natural for her to do all the housework, cooking, and cleaning. She replied unapologetically, to which my father-in-law scolded her. You're not working either, are you? What are you even saying? His point was valid. My mother-in-law, faced with his remark, grimaced and fell silent. My father-in-law is 3 years younger than my mother-in-law, making him 59. Therefore, he's nearing retirement but is still actively working. He worked at a publishing house, and he had a gentle personality. He's always been very kind to me. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law started frequently bragging about her days working at a major trading company when it was just the two of us. She probably didn't talk about it in front of my father-in-law and Ken because she didn't want to hear, "You're not working now, are you?" From her tone, it was clear she took great pride in her career at the trading company. And she seemed to enjoy belittling my career history to feel better about herself. You know, I graduated from a prestigious private university and joined a trading company. I was a star from my first year there. Always the ace, always praised by my bosses. I can't even count how many times I was recognized within the company. That's impressive, I would say, which only made her more smug and look down on me even more. Right? Compared to that, isn't your life so dull and boring? Well, it seems like you don't have the capability to shine in society anyway. Being unemployed suits you, I guess. You're nothing like me. Yeah. Her condescending attitude was getting on my nerves, but knowing that my husband and father-in-law were on my side was a consolation. Before my mother-in-law could say anything, I would quickly finish my chores and retreat to my room, living a life where I minimized my time with her as much as possible. I just let her trading company glory days stories slide off me. Eventually, I might have become mentally stronger because when her bragging seemed to drag on, I'd find an excuse to retreat to my room. My mother-in-law seemed desperate to brag to me, but lately, she seemed annoyed because I'd just go straight to my room. However, I pretended not to notice and went on with my days. It was almost a year since we started living together. During dinner with the four of us, my mother-in-law suddenly sulked and said, "Today, Mrs. Turner bragged to me." "Mrs. Turner, that's your friend, right?" Ken asked, and my mother-in-law nodded, then started talking gruffly. "Yeah, a neighbor. Apparently, her family went on a hot spring trip recently. They stayed at a luxury inn with a grand open-air bath in their room. The food was great too, they had such tender meat that it melted in their mouths. She said it was a blissful trip." That sounds nice," my father-in-law commented, and my mother-in-law's face twisted in annoyance as she snapped at him. "Not nice at all. Were you even listening? I was bragged to." It's as if she was saying we couldn't afford to stay at such a luxury inn. I felt so miserable. Why should I have to feel this way? That's a bit of a persecution complex, isn't it? Mom, calm down for a second. Ken tried to soothe her, but my mother-in-law wouldn't stop. It's not a persecution complex. How can you not understand how I felt at that moment? It's the first time I've ever felt so humiliated. It's so frustrating. And then, my mother-in-law finally turned her frustration towards me. We don't have money because there's an unemployed person in this house. My mother-in-law spat out, glaring at me. Mom, what are you talking about? Ken immediately tries to stop her, but my mother-in-law's anger only escalates. We're broke because we have one deadweight here. Hey, you haven't said a word, but you know it's about you, right? Why don't you say something? Do you realize that being a full-time housewife is just being unemployed? My mother-in-law accuses me, but honestly, I was fed up. I was infuriated that she, being unemployed herself, was harassing me for being the same. I couldn't hold back and retorted. You're unemployed right now too, aren't you, mother-in-law? What? She was taken aback by my response, her eyes widening in surprise. Her face quickly turned red with anger, and she yelled at me. Someone like you doesn't deserve our precious Ken. The unemployed should just leave. Ken and my father-in-law shout at her, but I loudly interject over their voices. Yes, gladly. With a big smile as if I were a pub server, my response leaves my mother-in-law dumbfounded. Ken and my father-in-law are also shocked. I immediately begin to clear my dishes, finish the washing up, and start preparing to leave the house. My mother-in-law, watching me, says mockingly, "Looks like you're really leaving." Ah, what a relief. Divorcing such a wife is the right choice, Ken. Mom, stop it. Ken is furious, scolding my mother-in-law. My father-in-law also says, "Apologize to Lisa right now," but my mother-in-law just sulks, offering no apology. I pack my belongings into my suitcase without speaking to anyone. Ken looks at me anxiously. Despite the tension, my mother-in-law, oblivious to the atmosphere, demands, "Hey, you're just washing your own dishes. Take ours down and do the washing up too." Naturally, I ignore her, but Ken and my father-in-law's scolding fills the house. The next morning, after I had packed my bags, I told Ken something in my room. Then, Ken and I signed the divorce papers I had printed out from my computer. "Mother-in-law, I'll submit this divorce form to the city hall." "Goodbye," I said, and then I left my in-laws' house. I could hear my mother-in-law's loud laughter coming from inside the house. She had no idea what was about to happen to her. A smile crept onto my face as I muttered, "You're mistaken if you think things will go your way." Then, as I had declared, I submitted the divorce papers to the city hall, and that was how my divorce from Ken became official. Half a year later, I received a call from my mother-in-law on my cell phone. "Hello?" As soon as I answered, my mother-in-law started ranting over my voice. "Finally got through. Until now, every time I called you, all I got was a busy tone, it never connected. What was that all about?" "Ah, I had set your number to be blocked. We're strangers now, after all." Ever since leaving my in-laws' house, I had blocked my mother-in-law's number, only unblocking it moments before she called. I was slightly surprised she called so soon after being unblocked. Blocked me? Don't mess with me. More importantly, what have you done with my precious Ken? Ken has disappeared. Did you do something to him? Even though you're divorced, you still have feelings for Ken, don't you? My mother-in-law was fuming with anger, shouting loudly. It had been a while since I heard my mother-in-law's voice, but she sounded as lively as ever. "Could you please lower your voice a bit? My ears hurt." "Shut up. Where are you now, anyway?" My mother-in-law continued to shout excitedly, regardless of my request for her to calm down. In contrast, I calmly informed her. "I've built a house and moved. I just finished moving in a little while ago." "What?" Her momentum halted abruptly, and she fell silent. But then she snapped back to reality and started yelling again. "What are you talking about, being unemployed? Where would an unemployed person get the money for that? What, a house? Sure, you talked about saving up for a home, but there's no way you, now single and unemployed, could afford to build a house. I have an annual income of $320,000. The fact I revealed made my mother-in-law gasp in shock, even over the phone. "You've always ridiculed me for being unemployed, but actually, I make videos. I'm what you'd call a YouTuber." "A YouTuber? Lisa, you?" My mother-in-law asks in disbelief. "Yes, that's right. I make videos about beauty products and trending items. I've been told my editing skills are good, and thanks to that, I now earn an annual income of $320,000. Indeed, after resigning from my job and marrying Ken, I started making videos to utilize my editing skills. It was going well from the start, but I never imagined I'd earn this much. Such a thing. That was it. You were always holed up in your room because you were making videos." "Well, that's, yes, partly for making videos. The main reason I started staying in my room was to escape from my mother-in-law's boasting, but it's true I wanted to carve out as much time for video creation as possible." "What the? You could have told me sooner if you were making so much." "Ugh, I thought you were just an unemployed person without any income, so I said some terrible things. But if you're earning that much, that's a different story. Hiding such a big thing, Lisa, you're so mean. My mother-in-law's tone changed completely upon hearing about my income, as if she had flipped a switch. Hey, now that we're on the subject, how about you gift me a trip? Of course, to a luxury inn. Book a more expensive inn than the hot spring trip Mrs. Turner went on. Then I can finally show her up. Mrs. Turner, that's the name of my mother-in-law's friend. She had been upset about Mrs. Turner bragging to her on the day I was told to leave the house, and it seems she's still holding a grudge. To such a mother-in-law, I sighed and told her. Why don't you go with the money you earned from the prestigious trading company yourself? What? What do you mean by that? Even though you earn so much, you're too stingy. How greedy! Just hurry up and book the luxury inn. The greedy one is my mother-in-law, for sure. It's somewhat admirable how she can demand such things from me after all she's done. Regardless of what you say, I have no intention of giving you any money. And about Ken, I'm currently living with him. What? You two are divorced, aren't you? My mother-in-law exclaimed in a ludicrous voice. Yes, we were divorced, but we got remarried. Ken moved in with me. We had made such an arrangement from the beginning. And married in. Actually, on the day I left my in-laws' house, Ken and I had discussed and decided to get divorced and then remarry, with him moving in with me. Ken was relieved to know I had no intention of being apart from him. I'll be staying at my parents' house for a while. I've already talked to them, so Ken, when you're ready, come to my parents' house. Okay, I understand. I'm really sorry about my mom. Ken was downcast, but since Ken and my father-in-law had always defended me from my mother-in-law, I was grateful to them. Then, Ken lied to my mother-in-law about having a long-term shoot and moved to my parents' house with only what he needed. My mother-in-law seemed unable to fully grasp the truth I had told her. I couldn't get through to Ken either, all I heard was a busy tone. Did he also block me? Why? My mother-in-law was bewildered. Yes, that's right. Ken has cut ties with you, mother-in-law. I had blocked you too, but now that the move is complete, I've unblocked you for a moment. I thought you might be looking for Ken's whereabouts, so I wanted to let you know. Of course, I won't tell you the address. Ken will continue to live with me, so please stop looking for him. Such a thing. After a few seconds of silence, my mother-in-law suddenly shouted. That's all lies. Are you threatening Ken? There's no way he would cut ties with me. My mother-in-law refused to believe my words. As I was wondering what to do, Ken came over and took the phone. Mom. It's me. Ken. Oh, good. So, it was a lie that you were cutting ties with me, right? You're being threatened by Lisa, aren't you? Tell me your address, I'll come to pick you up. My mother-in-law's pleading voice leaked through the phone. No, everything Lisa said is true. I can't forgive the way you treated her, and I've decided to cut ties with you. From now on, you are a stranger to me. Goodbye, Ken said and handed the phone back to me. I spoke to my mother-in-law again. Do you understand now, mother-in-law? Such a thing. My mother-in-law seemed to be sobbing. Then, I'll hang up now. Wait! Don't hang up yet. I accept cutting ties, but please, could you lend me some money? My mother-in-law appealed desperately. I was appalled that she was still talking about money at this point. What? As I said, I'm not booking any luxury inn for you. It's not about that. Actually, Dad found out I've been shopping a lot with his credit card, and now I'm on an allowance. $600 a month is unbearable. It's gone in a moment. Ah, so you were splurging, mother-in-law. Dad was worried about the savings decreasing, so I told him. When we were living together, I mentioned to him that you often came home with bags from brand stores. Ken and I have been in constant contact with my father-in-law all this time. My father-in-law, feeling bad about the trouble his wife had caused, even helped with the moving expenses to our new home. Recently, he confided in me that the savings in the household account had been disappearing, so I informed him about the frequent shopping sprees of my mother-in-law I had witnessed while living with them. Despite being unemployed, my mother-in-law always came home carrying loads of shopping bags, which I found suspicious.
You told him on me. What have you done? Dad got furious, put me on an allowance, and now I have to record every purchase in the household ledger. If I don't, he's threatening divorce.
It's your fault for spending recklessly, mother-in-law. You don't even have an income right now. Besides, if you're getting an allowance of $600, you should be grateful. You ought to thank Dad. Please, reflect on your actions, mother-in-law. As I spoke with exasperation, my mother-in-law began making excuses.
But when I was working, I could buy anything I wanted, so I just continued spending the same way after I retired. Plus, when I go shopping with my friends, I have to buy brand items so I don't lose to them.
I don't understand. Why do you need to put on such a facade? I asked, bewildered by her logic.
It's not a facade. You see, I was an elite working at a major trading company. I deserve to own expensive items.
I have nothing more to discuss with you, mother-in-law. I'm going to hang up now. After listening to her absurd reasoning, I ended the call, feeling a headache coming on. Just before hanging up, I thought I heard a pained cry from her. Later, according to my father-in-law, my mother-in-law couldn't stand the strict financial control. She secretly used his credit card for expensive purchases. When he found out, he declared divorce. My mother-in-law begged and pleaded, but his decision was firm, and he didn't change his mind about the divorce. Having no choice but to accept, my mother-in-law was kicked out and moved into a cheap apartment. Since then, she's been reluctantly working part-time to make ends meet. But being ordered around by much younger bosses has been a huge source of stress for her, given her high pride. Since then, my mother-in-law has called me numerous times. The calls were always either asking for money or complaining about her part-time job.
Listen, Lisa. That younger female boss of mine, she complains about things I do with good intentions. Telling me not to do unnecessary things. Isn't that cheeky? How dare she speak to me, an elite, like that?
Could you please stop calling me? We're strangers now. Even as I clearly expressed my frustration, my mother-in-law paid no heed.
Come on, it's just a little favor. And, well, could you lend me some money, even just a little? Just a bit. You earn a lot, Lisa, so you must have plenty of money, right? Please.
No, I've declined multiple times. When I responded coldly, my mother-in-law started to fake cry dramatically.
That's so cruel, Lisa. I hate living like this. Why did this happen to me? I was supposed to enjoy a graceful and leisurely retirement. My life is a mess now. Ugh.
It's all the result of your own actions. Unless you realize that, I don't think your life will ever get better. Please don't call me ever again. Saying this, I hung up and blocked my mother-in-law's number again. I have no idea what's become of her since, but I hope she reflects on her past behavior. Meanwhile, thanks to the success of my video streaming, Ken and I have started an advertising company. With the savings we had accumulated, we've been able to live without financial worries. Additionally, we've recently found out that I'm pregnant.
Ken and I, blessed and congratulated by my father-in-law and my parents, are eagerly awaiting the arrival of our new little family member. No way!
On my way shopping, I witnessed a scene I shouldn't have. My husband, who was supposed to be working on this holiday, was walking arm in arm with my mother. I followed them.
We might be seen by someone? It's fine, nobody comes here at this time. Let's at least go to a hotel first. I can't wait any longer. A little bit is okay, right? Well, I suppose it can't be helped.
Then, they embraced and kissed. I always thought my husband and mother got along well. I had my suspicions, but I never thought it would go this far. Hiding behind a sign, they went even further in their shocking behavior.
We really shouldn't do any more, someone might see us.
Though her words showed reluctance, her face looked pleased.
This is thrilling, isn't it?
Saying so, my husband reached for my mother's lower half. Seeing this scene made me feel sick, and I couldn't watch any longer.
What are you doing here?
I burst out in front of them. My mother, surprised, straightened her clothes. My husband, as if wanting to ask why I was there.
Cheating with your wife's mother?
I thought there might be some remorse, but there was none. On the contrary.
If it's out, then it can't be helped.
You have no right to be angry.
It's your fault for not satisfying him. Sorry, but you're no longer needed. What's that supposed to mean? Thanks to your mother, you're worthless now. Doing this, Dad won't stay quiet. At this point, who cares about someone who's about to be picked up soon?
I was so angry, I thought my blood vessels would burst. Ignoring me, they laughed mockingly as I rushed to my father. It seemed my father was aware of their relationship and had left something behind. He entrusted me with what to do next before passing away. With Dad gone, my husband and mother could do as they pleased. Obviously thrilled by the absence of the most troublesome obstacle.
It's been a while.
The next time I saw my husband and mother was at my father's funeral. My mother was affectionately touching her significantly larger belly.
Now you understand you're no longer needed. Don't worry. I'll give birth to a healthy baby. Our baby will surely be cuter than one with you.
Previously, such words would have affected me, but not anymore.
Good for you. Keep it up, you too. Stop pretending. You must be dying inside.
So annoying. That's why I told them the truth.
That baby, you know.
Following that, their faces turned pale. Of course, I wasn't going to let it end there. I have to do this thoroughly. That thought was growing stronger. I'm Michelle, an office worker. I'm turning 24 this year, but my mother, Juliana, is 44 years old. Ever since I was a child, I've been told by others how young and beautiful my mother is. Even now that I've started working, it's something I'm proud of.
Speaking of which, isn't today our wedding anniversary?
Oh.
That's right. Since it's a special occasion, tell me that story again. How many times are you going to make me repeat the same story?
According to my mother, she met my father right after graduating from high school. He used to frequent the cafe where she worked part-time. Apparently, my father gave in to my mother's passionate advances, and that's how their relationship started and eventually led to marriage. At that time, my father had just graduated from college and was only 23 years old.
But there was a lot of opposition to the marriage, right?
Yes.
Your father was worried he might get punched by my dad back then.
Really? I didn't know that.
Dad doesn't really talk about those kinds of things.
Unlike my rather unrestrained mother, my father gave the impression of being more reserved and serious. Hearing their story, it was surprising that two people so opposite got married. It seems my mother got pregnant with me soon after they married, and they faced a lot of opposition at the time, but my competitive mother fought against it.
So, Michelle, don't you have someone special?
No. I'm enjoying my work right now.
If you keep saying that, you'll turn into a grandma before you know it.
Don't say such unpleasant things. It was 2 weeks later that things started to change for me, who had no particular desire to marry. I went to a bar with a friend after work.
This place has a nice atmosphere, right?
Indeed.
But I don't really come to places like this often. I get a bit nervous. There's another reason I brought you here, though.
What?
Look over there.
My friend pointed towards a man making cocktails. He was tall and looked very cool.
He seems like your type, right, Michelle? Wait, you brought me here because of him? Why not try talking to him? I couldn't possibly do that.
I had only ever dated one person back in high school and hadn't really experienced much in the way of relationships. In the end, I went home without speaking to him that day. Before I knew it, I found myself going to the bar almost every day. More than wanting to talk to him, I was satisfied just watching him work. And then, as usual, I stopped by the bar before going home. I'm home. Welcome back. You've been coming home late recently. Where have you been? Just a bar. Huh. That's unexpected. Well, yeah. Could it be that there's a guy you like?
Why would you think that?
My mother has an uncanny ability to guess these things.
Hit the nail on the head, didn't I?
I ended up telling my mother everything that had happened. Then she said something surprising. Then maybe I should go check it out too.
What?
Let's go tomorrow.
Isn't that a bit sudden?
It's fine, right? Dad? I suppose, as long as it's not too late.
So, it's settled then.
Without saying anything, I ended up going to that bar with my mother. What surprised me there was that my mother quickly started chatting up the bartender, John. I, lacking my mother's boldness, ended up drinking alone and feeling somewhat left out. Then, Michelle, come join us over here. Okay. This girl here doesn't have a boyfriend, so take good care of her, will you?
Hey!
By the way, if you marry this girl, you get me as a bonus.
Don't say things like that. Dad will scold you.
That's right, I forgot. While my mother's runaway behavior was surprising, it somehow led to a fun time. Maybe she created that atmosphere to make me feel comfortable. Since that day, my mother hasn't accompanied me, but something nice has happened.
Me? Are you sure?
Of course.
I'd like to talk more with you. How about your next day off?
Yes, that's fine. John had asked me out on a date. I was surprised that he'd invite someone like me, but I had no reason to refuse. After that, he asked me out several times, and we steadily grew closer. About 6 months into dating, he confessed. I shared the happy news with my mother.
Really? That's wonderful. A good man like that isn't easy to find. Make sure you hold on to him.
I'll try my best. John really treated me well, and gradually, I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. Then,
will you marry me?
I promise to make you happy.
Yes.
And so, we went to greet our parents immediately. John's parents were supportive of the marriage too. It's been a while. I had a feeling it would come to this. What? You two knew each other? Well, it's a long story. So, we're here today to let you know about our engagement. Of course, I'm all for it. That's right. If the two of you have decided, then there's no reason for us to object. Thank you. This is how we became a married couple. Seeing John getting along with my mother and chatting happily with my father, I felt no worries about our future life together. I never imagined that this was just a facade, hiding an unbelievable scheme. My mother suggested we live together, but I declined, choosing instead for us to live by ourselves. John seemed a bit disappointed, but we had plenty to do in preparation for our new life. For now, we have a lot to do, but I'm looking forward to our future together. Me too. But for today, I'm exhausted. How about we go out to eat?
That sounds good. I'm in the mood for some meat.
All right. Let's go. Living together brought many unknowns, but it was also fresh and fun. As we got used to married life, we developed a new goal. I've been thinking it might be nice to start trying for a child. What do you think? Yes. Actually, I've been wanting one too. Then, shall we give it a try? Yeah. I had always wanted children but felt too shy to bring it up. We began to try for a baby. But having a child wasn't as easy as we hoped. I understood that children are a blessing, but it seemed John felt differently. After just 2 months, he began to get frustrated. Is it really this hard to have a child? Isn't something wrong?
These things can't be forced. It doesn't always happen right away.
No, I think there might be something wrong with you, Michelle.
What? Why me? It could just as easily be you.
Then John started laughing. That's impossible.
Why?
Because I'm superior. There's no way the problem is with me. It was the first time I felt angry at John. I thought we had been doing well, But it seemed I was the only one who thought so. Feeling overwhelmed, I decided to talk to my mother. What should I do? So, that's what happened. Maybe John is just feeling a bit pressured?
Pressured? I've been through something similar when I was younger. Dad was. Yeah, my in-laws kept saying we were young and should show them the baby quickly. I think that's why your dad was worried about it too. Oh, and let's keep this between us, okay? It's a long time ago, and dredging it up now would just be unpleasant for him.
All right. My mom suggested that it might be best not to touch on the topic for a little while and see how things go. Hoping John would calm down. Being my first time dealing with anything like this, I decided to take her advice. But consulting my mom turned out to be a mistake, as it led me down the worst possible path. Though I had no inkling of that at the time.
Oh, that's right. I have to go out later. Could you take care of Dad for me?
Sure, I got it. Take care.
Thanks.
I couldn't help but wonder if our awkward relationship could return to normal after this. Sensing my unease, my dad spoke up.
Something on your mind?
Oh, it's nothing. I couldn't elaborate because my mom had sworn me to secrecy.
If it's hard to talk about, you don't have to force yourself. Just make sure you have no regrets. No matter how much you dwell on the past, time won't reverse.
Yeah, you're right.
Thanks.
I felt somewhat encouraged. There's no one as reliable as my dad in times like these. Not long after, an unexpected incident occurred with my dad. While we were out for a walk, a distracted driver hit us. I only had minor scratches, but my dad wasn't so lucky. He suffered severe injuries, including broken bones, and there was a possibility of lasting damage.
Why won't they answer?
I called both my mom and John, but neither picked up. I rushed to the hospital. By the time I arrived, my dad was already in surgery, and all I could do was wait. Mom and John arrived after the surgery was over.
Sorry, we're late. What were you doing all this time? My phone was on silent, didn't notice. Don't be too hard on her.
Juliana.
How's Dad?
Just got out of surgery. Then the doctor who performed the surgery came out.
How's my dad?
The surgery was successful, but there might be lasting effects on his leg. We'll need to wait and see. I see. After 3 months in the hospital, my dad was discharged. Sorry about all this.
It's not your fault, Dad.
Maybe, but what about Mom and the others?
I did tell them you were getting discharged today. Haven't they been a bit cold lately? Did they visit you in the hospital?
A few times, can't remember how many. Dad ended up with a disability, needing a cane to walk. He worked in construction but decided to quit, not wanting to be a burden. Mom objected to him quitting.
How are we supposed to live if you quit your job?
I thought that was out of line.
If it's such a big deal, why don't you work? Why should I have to?
Our argument continued until John made a suggestion.
Why don't we all live together? What?
Think about it.
It would make taking care of your dad easier, and life might be a bit easier for us, too.
Considering what to do, Mom quickly supported the idea.
You know the point. Wait a minute.
What?
It's not like it's a bad thing. This benefits both of us.
Dad seemed to agree. Probably not wanting to complicate things further.
Okay. Then, let's start preparing.
John, help out.
Sure.
They began preparations for moving in together with enthusiasm.
Michelle, can I talk to you for a sec?
What's up?
What do you think about those two?
How do I feel?
Well, I guess they get along.
Right.
Huh?
Never mind. I wasn't sure why he asked, but figured he wasn't fully on board with the living arrangement. We soon canceled our lease and moved back to my childhood home. I had thought this would give my dad some peace of mind, but the outcome was different than expected. The care my mother had provided for my dad fell to me, and she did whatever she wanted.
Tomorrow I'll be home late, so please take care of Dad. Tomorrow won't work for me. I have plans. John has work at night, too, so Dad will be alone. It's only for a little while, he'll be fine. Maybe, but still.
By this time, my mother no longer held back in her behavior towards my dad. Perhaps she had grown tired of caring for him, even if it was just for a short period. Being freed from this duty might have emboldened her. Even if that were the case, it was terribly unfair to my dad. And then, the next day, John, who was supposed to have work until the early morning, came home before midnight. Normally, he wouldn't return until the first train. That's when I noticed something odd.
What's going on?
I smell something familiar. Do you? While we were talking at the entrance, my elegantly dressed mother came home. That's when my question was answered. The scent coming from John was the same as the perfume my mother wore. I blurted it out.
Are you both wearing the same perfume? Huh? It has to be the same one, right? Maybe the scent transferred?
I pushed further.
When? I don't know about that. Like Juliana said, living together, scents can transfer. But why would it be on your neck? Well, that's because...
John stumbled over his words, and my mother quickly intervened.
Anyway, I'm really tired and want to change, okay?
John, why don't you change too?
Yeah, I'll do that.
They hurried off to their room as if fleeing. It was hard not to think they were hiding something. If my suspicions were correct, I didn't know what I would do. After that, John and my mother started avoiding conversations with me. Then, one day after work,
I'm home.
No one responded, which was odd, so I headed to the living room. There, a man dressed in an unfamiliar suit was talking with my dad.
Michelle, you're back? Yeah. Then, I'll be going. All right. Take care of that matter we discussed. You're sure about this?
No regrets. I wondered what they were talking about. The man left.
Who was that?
An old friend of mine.
I see.
My dad seemed hesitant before asking.
Can you promise not to tell anyone what I'm about to say? That's quite sudden. It's very important.
My dad gave me a look I'd never seen before, full of intensity. I nodded in silence.
He's a skilled detective. I've consulted with him and asked for a favor. A detective? I can't explain now, but please keep this between you and me.
I didn't miss his muttered words. What does he mean by running out of time? Soon, I would come to understand what those words meant. After this conversation, our family split into two sides. Essentially, it was my dad and me against my mother and John. My mother acted as if my dad didn't exist. John sided with her. I wanted to speak up, but my dad stopped me. To be honest, I didn't understand what my dad was planning. He then started to isolate himself in his room.
Are you okay? Maybe you should rest. I'm fine. There's still something I need to do.
He became noticeably thinner, to the point where walking alone was a struggle. He prioritized something over his own health. When I realized this, I decided to be ruthless. On this day, encouraged by my dad, I went to the neighboring town to blow off some steam. Since it's not somewhere I usually go, walking in front of the station, I witnessed a scene that made me doubt my eyes.
No way! Why are they here together?
John, who was supposed to be working today, was walking arm in arm with my mother, Juliana. If I had thought about it more carefully, I should have realized something was off. John works at a bar, but working from morning is way too early, and my mother said she was going shopping with a friend, yet here they are.
Where are they going?
I followed them discreetly to make sure they didn't notice me. After a while, they entered a dimly lit alley. I kept following them, careful not to lose sight. Then, I could hear their voices.
We might be seen by someone? It's fine, nobody comes here at this time. Let's at least go to a hotel first. I can't wait any longer. A little bit is okay, right? Well, I suppose it can't be helped.
Then, right before my eyes, they embraced and kissed. I had thought my husband and mother got along well. I had suspicions, but I never thought it would go this far. No, I just didn't want to think about it. Hiding behind a sign, they went even further in their shocking behavior.
We really shouldn't do any more, someone might see us.
Though her words showed reluctance, my mother's face looked pleased.
This is thrilling, isn't it?
Saying so, John reached for my mother's lower half. Seeing this scene made me feel sick, and I couldn't watch any longer.
What are you doing here?
I burst out in front of them. My mother, surprised, straightened her clothes. John, as if wanting to ask why I was there.
Cheating with your wife's mother?
I thought there might be some remorse, but there was none. On the contrary.
If it's out, then it can't be helped.
You have no right to be angry.
It's your fault for not satisfying him. Sorry, but you're no longer needed. What's that supposed to mean?
Thanks to your mother, you're worthless now.
Doing this, Dad won't stay quiet. At this point, who cares about someone who's about to be picked up soon?
I was so angry, I thought my blood vessels would burst.
Just you wait.
Ignoring me, they laughed mockingly as I rushed to my father.
Well, that figures.
My father didn't even seem surprised. It was as if he knew everything, which surprised me even more.
You knew all along? Since when? From the first time I met him. At that time, I just thought they were unusually close. But living together made me certain. No way!
Michelle, you thought something was off too, right?
Well, that is.
But you didn't want to admit it. My father looked sad. I didn't want to see him with that expression.
But, Michelle, I wasn't just sitting by silently. I did what had to be done.
He told me to wait, then brought an envelope from the bedroom.
Is it okay to look?
Yeah. Inside the envelope were numerous pieces of evidence of John and my mother's affair. And among them was even more shocking information.
This is... I didn't even realize this. Maybe this was the main issue. With all this information, I'm entrusting this information to you, Michelle.
Are you sure?
Yeah. I'm sure you'll make better use of it than I could.
But how did you?
You've met him once before, right?
I had completely forgotten. But it was the man in the suit, the detective. Using this evidence, I could corner them both. However, they didn't come back. That was to be expected. How could they show their faces after what they've done? When they did come back, it would be the end for both of them. I was somewhat excited while waiting, but then my father's condition worsened. He had to be hospitalized, and despite the treatment, he passed away 3 days later. The cause was old age. He had probably overexerted himself, already being weak. Now, my husband and mother could do as they pleased.
Did you hear he died?
Sorry, but we're busy.
So, could you handle the funeral arrangements? Are you kidding me?
We're completely serious. See you at the funeral. With the most troublesome figure, my father, gone, they seemed pleased. And then the day of the funeral came. As I was greeting the attendees,
it's been a while.
The traitor, John, approached me. Next to him, my mother was caressing her slightly bigger belly.
Now you understand you're no longer needed. Don't worry. I'll give birth to a healthy baby. Our baby will surely be cuter than one with you.
If it were the old me, I might have lashed out right there. But now, I couldn't care less about their words. Good for you. Keep it up, you too. Stop pretending.
You must be dying inside.
So annoying. That's why I told them the truth.
There's nothing sadder than a man who understands nothing.
What do you mean?
Then let me enlighten you.
I showed them the evidence my father had entrusted me with.
Too bad, but showing us that now doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
Your father is gone, it's meaningless.
That was all within my expectations. But I had something up my sleeve.
I have a question for my mother. Is that child in your belly really John's?
Of course it is.
Why would you ask that?
I wasn't asking you.
Mother, what about it? Don't ask obvious questions. This child is mine and John's.
Despite her words, I didn't miss her eyes darting away.
So, what's this?
I showed them a photo of my mother with a man who wasn't John.
Just a friend. Oh, really? Going to hotels with just a friend, how interesting. What is this? Explain.
It's a setup.
You can deny it all you want, but maybe we should ask this man.
Huh?
Detectives these days are incredibly efficient. They can find out everything, including work and family details. Let me see.
John scrutinized the documents I had gathered.
Seriously? If you can't believe it, why not get a DNA test? Though, you'll have to wait until the baby is born. If you can handle the wait. I don't know any man like that.
I sighed.
How much longer will you deny it? Well, I figured you'd say that, so I've taken measures. What now?
That's enough. Then a man sitting with his back to us stood up and turned around.
Why him?
Look familiar? Standing there was the man from the photo. Tim, younger than John. The adulterous pair were brought together.
Say what you need to, you're free to do as you please. So, it's not my child after all. Maybe you're the reason we couldn't have kids. You should get checked.
I left them to sort it out among themselves. After all, my father's funeral was about to begin.
You don't have to attend the funeral. Just go somewhere else.
I signaled to Tim.
Let's leave for now.
Wait a minute. John seemed in shock. Mumbling to himself.
Just go away, you're a nuisance. Forgive me. I was deceived too.
Same here.
Unfortunately, I'll be expecting a hefty alimony, so look forward to that. But, just so you're aware, don't expect any inheritance from Dad for Mom. Inheritance?
Of course.
Such a foolish woman.
Then, the three of them left the funeral. Now, there were no more obstacles. My father's funeral concluded smoothly, and I was able to see him off. But I still had plans for those two to suffer. The day after the funeral ended, I immediately started taking action. First, I consulted a lawyer to divorce John. At the same time, I initiated the process to claim damages from both John and my mother. They showed up at the family home a week later.
What are you doing here now? This is my house. I've disposed of everything unwanted. Including your things. All of my stuff too?
Obviously.
How could you have the nerve to come back?
That was a lie. I had stored my mother and John's belongings in a rental storage. I wanted to give them a taste of despair, no matter what.
By the way, what happened to Tim? Well, that is...
After that, it seems John had himself tested for fertility issues. The results confirmed that the problem was indeed with John. This meant that the child in my mother's belly couldn't be his. Tim had agreed not to acknowledge the child with my mother. Interesting.
So, John ends up raising someone else's child, and Mom is abandoned by the father. I can't stop laughing. Isn't this punishment enough? So help us out. We have nowhere to live now. That's something you two need to figure out on your own. It's all your own doing. Is this how you treat your husband? After everything you've done, this is only fair. I've prepared the bare minimum of your belongings. Take them and leave.
Where they ended up, I don't know. I heard they're living modestly in a distant countryside. Later, the family home became mine, and I started living alone. Living by myself for the first time, but without any worries, it seems life will be enjoyable from now on. As I entered Harper's house, I opened the door to a room that looked like an old storage shed. Then, in the corner of the pitch-dark room, I found Susan.
What in the world happened?
I called out, and Susan looked up. Her complexion was terribly poor.
Grandma!
Next to Susan, there were textbooks and workbooks.
How long have you been in a place like this? And without even turning on the light? For a year, I've been right here. What?
A year in a place like this, studying? And around her, there were bowls and cups too. So, she was eating here as well.
Can you tell me what's going on, for Grandma?
I took Susan's hand and spoke to her. After hearing Susan's story, I couldn't hide my shock. I couldn't believe she had been through something so awful. Harper was the root of all evil. As I left the storage room, I was absolutely livid. I found Harper and screamed at her, shaking with anger.
What were you thinking? Locking a child up in a place like that? What you're doing is wrong.
Just as Harper began to retort, the front door opened, and someone entered the house.
How could you?
I watched Harper with a cold gaze. My name is Hannah Kirk, 63 years old. Currently, I live with my husband, Ken, just the two of us, and I'm a homemaker. Ken is turning 65 this year. He's retired, and we're spending our days relaxing at home. Our children are our eldest son, Caleb, and our second son, Sean. Caleb is 38 years old, and Sean is 34. They've long since flown the nest and built their own families, and now we only see them during the holidays, like Thanksgiving and Christmas. Since our second son and his wife don't have kids, our only grandchild is Caleb's daughter, Susan. Susan is turning 8 this year, a lively and adorable little girl. She always talks to us, saying "Grandma, Grandma," and gifts us with her amazing drawings. The illustration she made of Ken and me smiling is displayed in the most prominent spot in our living room. Every time we see it, it warms our hearts. I wonder how Susan is doing. It's about time we saw her again, Ken says, squinting his eyes.
Yes, I'd love to see a bunch of her drawings again.
Susan must be happily drawing even today. We believed so. But at this time, we couldn't have imagined the unexpected events that were happening to Susan. It was on a sunny morning. The doorbell rang, and I opened the door. Standing there was Harper.
It's been a while, Hannah. Oh, Harper. What's going on?
I was surprised. Harper is Caleb's wife. Since they live about a 3-hour train ride from here, they rarely come to our house. I wondered what could have happened.
Sorry for the sudden visit. I have a favor to ask. What is it? Come in, anyway.
I led Harper into the living room. Ken was also surprised to see Harper, who we hadn't seen in a while. Harper is the same age as Caleb, 38. She looked the same as the last time we saw her, with light makeup and simple clothing. But she seemed to have a tired look on her face. Without even touching the tea I offered, Harper started to speak.
Hannah and Ken, actually, I need to borrow some money. What? Why's that? It's for Susan's tutoring fees. She's already attending one, but we're thinking of enrolling her in another one known for its track record in getting students into competitive schools. Tutoring.
I was surprised. Susan is still in elementary school. I didn't think she needed tutoring. I was about to say so, but times have changed since my day, and I don't know much about the current educational climate. So, I couldn't outright deny it.
Susan wants to be a lawyer. That's why we need to focus on her studies from now.
This is the first I've heard of it. Susan was supposed to be a child who loved drawing.
I thought she said she wanted to do something with her drawing skills before.
I tilted my head in confusion. Then, Harper's eyes widened with intensity.
How can you say that? There's no way that's true. Susan is going to be a lawyer, no matter what anyone says. So please, lend us the money.
Harper's forcefulness completely intimidated Ken and me. If that's the case, we need to check with Caleb. Ken began, but Harper quickly regained her composure and responded with a smile.
Don't worry, Ken. Caleb agrees with this. We'll pay you back as soon as we get our bonus. But she's already attending one tutoring school, right? And you want to enroll her in another one? Hannah, the competition starts from elementary school these days. If she doesn't excel in her studies, she'll be left behind in society. It's for Susan's future. Please understand, I beg you.
Now she was pleading with tears in her eyes. Ken and I looked at each other and fell silent. It's hard to refuse when it's for Susan's future.
I'd at least like to hear it directly from Susan.
Susan is currently studying at home without any distractions. She doesn't want to waste time and is working very hard. Please don't disturb her.
As adults, it's our job to support Susan's wishes as much as we can, isn't it?
Is that so?
How much do you need?
For now, just $2,000 for the summer course fees.
The payment deadline is approaching.
Ken sighed.
All right. If it's what Susan wants.
Yes.
I'll withdraw it from the bank.
So, we ended up lending the money to Harper. But it was also new to us. The idea that Susan wanted to become a lawyer. Yet, we are just grandparents and not living together. It's not unusual for kids to change their minds. I convinced myself of that. But the story didn't end there. A few days later, while reading the newspaper, Ken looked up and said softly,
You know, about Susan wanting to be a lawyer. If that's really what she wants, of course, I'll support her. It just came out of nowhere. Yes, maybe we should try to hear it from Susan herself.
I decided to make a call. Since Susan doesn't have a cell phone, I had no choice but to contact Harper.
Oh, Harper? Thanks for last time.
Is Susan there? Can I talk to her?
Susan? She can't come to the phone.
She's busy. Harper answered bluntly. Just for a little while, I insisted. Then Harper started yelling suddenly.
Just a little while. What if she misses solving a problem in that time? The entrance test for that tutoring school we talked about is coming up. The results will determine her class placement. She has to get into the top class, or she'll fall behind. Do you have any idea how hard it is to catch up after that?
Overwhelmed by Harper's tirade, I was taken aback. With Harper not budging, I had no choice but to hang up. How did it go? Ken asked worriedly. I shook my head. No good. Harper won't let her talk.
What? Why?
I don't understand either.
I'll call Caleb.
I searched for Caleb's name in my smartphone contacts. Actually, Caleb hasn't been living with Harper for about a year. He's been on a business assignment alone. Thankfully, he's been well regarded by his company, and he mentioned last year with pride that a promotion was promised once he returned from this assignment. I didn't want to drag him into this if I could avoid it, but at this point, I had no choice. Caleb picked up the phone right away. Hello?
Oh, it's you, Mom. Sorry to bother you when you're busy. It's about Susan.
I briefly explained the exchange I had with Harper. Caleb was surprised.
What? Susan wants to be a lawyer? That's news to me.
It seemed Caleb was hearing this for the first time too. He also wasn't aware that Harper had become so enthusiastic about education. Being away from home for a year, that's not surprising.
I'm not sure what's going on, but Harper must have started some weird talk. I'm swamped with work right now. It'll be a while before I can come home, but I'll try to talk to them directly next time. That might be best. I don't want to overstep, but Harper's sudden change is somewhat worrying. Is it really that strange? Oh, now that you mention it, speaking of lawyers.
What Caleb told me. It was enough to stoke my worries. On the weekend, Ken and I had come to Harper's house. It's our eldest son and his wife's place. Maybe it's wrong for me to interfere. But I had a bad feeling. After all, I'd only heard Harper's yelling, not a peep from Susan herself. I wanted to know what Susan thought. Plus, Caleb wasn't here right now. I wondered how Susan was doing, just with Harper. We rang the doorbell and introduced ourselves, and a flustered Harper answered. What's going on, Hannah, you too? Harper was clearly flustered. We were visiting a friend in the area and decided to stop by on our way back. I replied with a smile. A little white lie. By the way, is Susan here? At my question, Harper became flustered.
Well, she's not feeling well and is resting in the back. I'm sorry you came all this way. Just seeing her face for a bit would be okay. No, but I don't think she'll want to see anyone. So, maybe today is not good.
Harper was adamant about not letting us see Susan, not budging an inch. Something felt off. Then, Ken suddenly exclaimed.
Ow! My back, my chronic back pain is acting up.
Ken was clutching his back, crouching down in pain.
Are you okay?
Ken gave me a look. He was signaling an opportunity.
Harper, do you know if there's a chiropractor around here?
I think there might be. We left our taxi waiting over there. Could you show us the way? Sorry for the trouble. Ken forcefully asked Harper for directions and headed towards the taxi. While watching them leave, I muttered an apology. Sorry about this, Harper. And then entered the house. It was silent, with no sign of anyone around. I opened each room door, searching for Susan. Susan? Where are you, Susan? She wasn't in any of them. The only place left was an old and used storage room. With resolve, I opened the door. There, in the dark room, was Susan.
What in the world happened?
When I spoke, Susan looked up. Seeing Susan's face after so long, she seemed to have a terribly pale complexion. Textbooks and workbooks were cramped together nearby.
Grandma, why are you in a place like this? And without even turning on the lights? I've been studying here all this time. They said it costs too much to use electricity, so I've been solving problems using a flashlight.
Susan spoke weakly.
Since when? For a year, I've been here all this time. What?
Studying in a place like this for a year? And there were bowls and cups around. Was she eating here too? Can you tell Grandma what's going on? I took Susan's hand and spoke to her.
But...
Susan hesitated. Maybe she was afraid of Harper. It's okay, Susan. Grandma is on your side. With that, Susan started to cry. And began to speak haltingly. The story Susan told went like this. About a year ago, when Caleb went on a solo business assignment and it was just Susan and Harper living together. Harper changed. Harper had said to Susan, who usually loved drawing, "Susan, you're already 8. It's time to start focusing more on your studies, considering middle school entrance exams. Stop wasting time on those silly drawings." Of course, Susan tried to argue. But Harper wouldn't listen. Worse yet, she tore up Susan's drawings. Listen, the drawings that won't help your future need to stop. You're going to be a lawyer. You'll be respected by everyone, and it's a job that helps people. That's good, right? Harper had said, with a smile on her face. From then on, Susan's days became hellish. She was ordered to attend tutoring classes and complete a massive amount of homework every day. Although Susan was in the 3rd grade, she was studying at a middle school level due to advanced education efforts. There was no allowance for rest. If Susan's test results were poor, Harper would become furious and berate her. Eventually, Harper said, as a punishment, you'll live in the storage room, and so Susan's meals and study sessions were held there. On top of that, if you can't answer the problems, don't sleep inside the house, she was told, and it seems she slept under the eaves sometimes. Occasionally, Caleb came home from his assignment. However, Harper would act completely normal only during those times. And she made sure to warn, you know what will happen if you tell your dad, right? Making it impossible for anyone to seek help. I was stunned by the outrageousness. Harper wasn't just enthusiastic about education. She was clearly overdoing it. I was trembling with anger. Harper said it was for Susan's future, but this couldn't possibly be for Susan's benefit.
I was drawing this secretly because Mom would get mad if she found out.
Susan showed me a piece of paper. It had a colorful drawing on it. A bright drawing that made anyone looking at it feel happy. Thinking about her drawing her best in such a hellish environment made my heart tighten. Susan didn't want to be a lawyer. It was just Harper saying so on her own. What was she thinking, forcing Susan to do this and lying to us? I looked into Susan's eyes and spoke. I understand the situation. Thank you for telling me. For now, let's go to our house. Staying in this house isn't good. The more I heard, the more convinced I became. Harper was not in a state to accept persuasion calmly. First and foremost, we needed to get Susan out of this house. Then, the area near the entrance became noisy. Harper and Ken must have returned.
Susan, wait here for a bit.
I told Susan and left the storage room. I had to confront Harper clearly now. Seeing me coming out of the room, Harper exclaimed,
Hannah, how dare you enter rooms without permission? Did Ken lie about his back pain, and both of you deceive me?
Looking behind Harper, Ken was now standing up straight.
Sorry about that. But you lied too, didn't you? Saying Susan wants to be a lawyer, that's a blatant lie. Locking a child up like that. What were you thinking?
My words made Harper respond with a look of anger.
I haven't lied. Susan is going to be a lawyer. That's been decided.
Ken was completely taken aback by Harper's ugly yelling. The reason she was so obsessed with the lawyer thing. There was an answer in the story I heard from Caleb.
It's not Susan. It was you who wanted to become a lawyer, wasn't it?
Harper was at a loss for words, hit right on the mark. According to Caleb, Harper once aspired to be a lawyer. But she failed the exam. Defeated, she became an office worker. After marrying Caleb and giving birth to Susan, perhaps she remembered her old dream. It seemed she tried to impose her own wishes on her child. After marrying Caleb and giving birth to Susan, perhaps she remembered her old dream. It seemed she tried to impose her own wishes on her child. I said clearly, as if to admonish.
Children are not tools to fulfill your dreams. Sure, studying is important, but not to the extent of forcing them so much. You're trapped in your past self, not seeing Susan as she is now. You're being noisy. What do you know? Becoming a lawyer means a secure future. It's for Susan's sake.
Harper's continued yelling was now just pitiable. Then, the front door opened. The person who entered the living room was Caleb.
Caleb, why?
Harper was confused. Caleb, in his suit, was out of breath. It seems he rushed back from his assignment.
I got a call from Mom, got worried, and came back early. Never thought it'd be something like this.
Ignoring me, Harper desperately tried to appeal to Caleb.
It's a misunderstanding. I just wanted to support Susan's dreams.
Caleb, unfazed by Harper's words, firmly said.
I heard from Mom. You came to borrow money to enroll Susan in an expensive tutoring school? And you even lied that I was on board with it.
Caleb reproached Harper, who momentarily looked guilty. But she quickly regained her composure and began to speak.
This is for her future investment, not just some debt.
Harper mumbled her excuses. At that moment, Caleb picked up a document from the desk.
This tutoring school?
It was an application form for the tutoring school. Nearby, a brochure boasted phrases like dramatic improvement in grades and success in entering competitive schools. Despite already attending a tutoring school, Harper was planning to enroll her in another one. A glance around revealed various books on child education methods scattered about, including an application form for a dubious seminar titled How to Make Your Child a Genius. Surely it was expensive. The amount of money being spent was chilling. Caleb, seeing the application form, was shocked.
It's this expensive. What are you thinking? But, until now, I've been managing with the savings from my single days. It's just that recently it wasn't enough, so I asked your parents for support.
Harper quickly made an excuse. She didn't think she was in the wrong at all. Caleb sighed deeply, seemingly deciding to ignore Harper. Turning back to me, he said tiredly,
There's no point in talking to Harper anymore.
Where's Susan?
She's in a storage room in the back. She was isolated there, supposedly as punishment for not doing well in her studies. She even has her meals there, and I heard she sleeps under the eaves. I can't bear to leave Susan here.
Hearing this, Caleb exploded. What? That's unbelievable. Then Susan came out of the room.
Dad.
She had lost weight, and dark circles were under her eyes. Seeing this, Caleb hugged Susan.
I'm sorry, Susan. I didn't realize. I'm so sorry.
And then, glaring at Harper, Caleb said,
I can't leave Susan here any longer. I'm taking her with me. Yes, that's best. You can't just decide that.
Harper protested, but Caleb shouted back.
I can't trust you anymore. Reflect on what you've done by yourself for a while.
Harper flinched, falling silent. Leaving Harper standing there, Caleb, Susan, and I left the house. We started walking towards the station. Caleb was still handling calls from work on the way. He seemed extremely busy. After finishing his call, Caleb asked us a favor.
Sorry, Mom. Work is just too hectic right now. Can you take care of Susan for a while? I'll figure something out once things settle down. Of course. We'll take good care of Susan, so don't worry. Are you okay, Susan?
I turned to Susan.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Susan looked a bit anxious. Maybe Harper's influence was still affecting her. I squeezed her hand to offer some comfort. By the time we got to my parents' house, it had gotten completely dark. Susan finished her dinner and fell asleep right away. She must have been forced to do too much lately. She seemed so worn out.
Poor thing. To force such a child to do all this.
I couldn't help but tear up looking at Susan's sleeping face.
I never imagined it would come to this.
Ken also sighed deeply. Caleb left Susan in our care and went back to his assignment. He said he would try to persuade Harper, but I wondered if he could really do it. My worries were spot on. A week later, I received a call from Caleb. He had been trying to get in touch with Harper in between his busy work schedule. He repeatedly tried to convince Harper how foolish she had been and urged her to change her ways. However, Harper showed no signs of remorse. Instead, she kept saying things like, "Where did you take Susan? She's going to fall behind in her studies. There's a test coming up soon. Are you still saying that? Please, come to your senses," Caleb pleaded, but she quickly retorted.
I've always been sensible. I'm the one who thinks about Susan the most.
No matter how many hours they talked, they couldn't reach a resolution. Eventually, she started hanging up the phone on him. The situation is making no progress. Discussions about possibly getting a divorce and Caleb formally taking custody of Susan began to emerge. One morning, the doorbell rang and I opened the door. Harper standing there.
Harper!
Harper was in her pajamas, her hair was a mess. And her eyes were wild.
Hannah! Susan is here, right? Give her back to me.
Harper barged in, frantically searching for Susan.
What's going on?
Ken was surprised by the sudden visit. Ignoring Ken, Harper rushed upstairs.
Susan! Susan!
I hurried after Harper, and she finally opened the door to Susan's room.
Mom!
Susan exclaimed in surprise upon seeing Harper.
Let's go home, Susan. There's an exam coming up soon, you need to solve these problems. What are you talking about? Susan is.
As I tried to intervene, Harper immediately shouted.
Hannah, please be quiet.
Confused by her mother's sudden appearance, Susan stood up and said firmly,
I'm not going back. How can you say that? I can't become a lawyer. I think studying is important, but I have other things I want to do in the future. Don't decide my future for me, Mom.
Shocked by Susan's firm tone, Harper's face twisted in shock. I embraced Susan's shoulders.
Well said, Susan.
However, Harper glared at me in a rage.
I get it now, you guys brainwashed Susan, didn't you? I won't forgive this. Susan is going to be a lawyer.
How could she come up with such a foolish idea that we were brainwashing Susan? Harper was beyond reasoning with. I raised my voice, though I thought it was futile. I had to say this.
What are you talking about? Wake up. Can't you hear your child's real voice? Susan is suffering because of your actions. You keep saying it's for the child, but you're only thinking about yourself. If you want to be a lawyer, you should make the effort yourself now. It's wrong to force that on Susan.
Harper was silenced by my words, looking frustrated. But then, her eyes sharpened. And she grabbed Susan's arm as if to use force.
Come on, Susan, it's time to study. No! Let me go, Mom!
Harper forcefully dragged Susan out of the room.
Wait!
Susan resisted. In the midst of their struggle, they lost their balance. Careful! Ken shouted. But it was too late, and they tumbled down the stairs.
Susan! Harper!
When I called out, Susan said she was okay and got up, but Harper was motionless. Ken immediately called an ambulance. I was bewildered by the grave situation. Later, Harper was taken to the hospital by ambulance. The MRI showed no brain issues, just a temporary concussion. However, upon regaining consciousness, she seemed unable to distinguish reality, muttering terrifying words repeatedly.
Susan, you need to study. Susan.
This level of obsession was frightening. Then, Harper began to act violently. Suddenly crying out, mistaking nurses for Susan and yelling at them to study. Seeing her condition, the doctor said, "It seems her mental state is not well." Harper was referred to a psychiatric unit. Due to her violent outbursts and screaming, it was recommended she be hospitalized for a while. I had sensed something was off, but it seems there was indeed a problem with her mind. After admitting Harper, we contacted her parents. We asked them to come to the hospital and explained Harper's recent behavior. Her parents were pale, likely never imagining their daughter could end up like this. They promised to take good care of Harper from now on. Time passed, and Caleb told Harper he wanted a divorce. Naturally, Harper refused. However, Caleb filed for divorce, and it was eventually granted. Custody of Susan was awarded to Caleb. Later, Harper's parents called us, and we visited the hospital again.
We are so sorry for the trouble caused by her.
In the hospital's lounge, Harper's mother showed her regret and handed us an envelope.
This is the money she borrowed from you for Susan's tutoring fees. She's gone for too much.
It was the $2,000 we lent for Susan's tutoring. Harper's parents had covered it. I looked at them intently. They should be in their 60s, the same as us, but they looked much older. Probably aged by the ordeal.
Thank you for coming. How is Harper?
I asked casually.
Well, she's not doing well. Yelling at anyone to study or screaming you're going to be a lawyer. She'll have to stay here a bit longer. Harper's mother sighed.
It turns out, Harper's parents had always told her to study hard and aim for a respectable profession since she was young. If her grades were poor, they would yell at her.
Maybe we pushed young Harper too hard, and it led to this. It's too late now, but we deeply regret it.
Harper's mother's unexpected confession left me with mixed feelings. This was why Harper had gone mad. The negative cycle had been passed down from her parents to Harper, and then to Susan. But such things must come to an end. I declared resolutely.
Children have their own happiness. Pushing parental ideals too much can break a child's heart. Susan was in danger of going down that path. From now on, Caleb and we will take responsibility and raise Susan in a nurturing environment. Upon hearing this, Harper's mother was in tears.
Maybe she regretted how she treated young Harper. We hoped for a life where Harper, though broken, could be supported moving forward. We left the hospital with these thoughts. Afterward, Susan and Caleb began living with us. Caleb had requested a transfer. He managed to work at a branch close to our home by speaking with his boss. I worried this might affect his promotion, but Caleb reassured it was fine. It's okay. I've been too focused on work and overlooked the discomfort between Harper and Susan. I regret that. Now, I want to pay more attention to Susan, he said with a smile. Luckily, Caleb's understanding boss allowed him to earn his promotion through merit. We were relieved. Susan had regained her brightness since then. Moving here meant she could no longer attend her old school, and I was concerned about her transferring. But Susan said it was better to transfer. At her previous home, study was prioritized over playtime with friends. It led her to become isolated. The transfer allowed her to regain her brightness, and she made many new friends. Now, she's sharing her favorite illustrations with everyone. And dreams of becoming an illustrator. Seeing Susan return to her old self filled me with joy. The future of a child can sometimes be a source of worry. Adults tend to lay tracks too much for them. But that can become mere imposition of ideals if not careful. We can only keep it in mind and quietly watch their growth. The most important thing is Susan's smile. We continue to hope for Susan to grow up healthy and happy. My name is Julie. I'm 32 years old. I work in an administrative position at a major conglomerate. My husband, Ken, is 35 years old, 3 years my senior. Up until last year, we lived with my in-laws, but after my mother-in-law passed away, my father-in-law followed her soon after, leaving Ken and me living alone in our house. We don't have any kids, and Ken says, let's just enjoy doing what we love and live freely, just the two of us. We're a couple who enjoy a carefree lifestyle. However, recently Ken has been coming home late from work. Hey, you've been coming home late recently, is work busy?
After my parents passed away one after the other, I've been feeling down. Focusing on work helps distract me and makes things a bit easier.
Ken said, looking distressed. It must be hard for him, grieving the loss of both parents. There are also times he comes home late because he went out drinking with colleagues, so I decided to leave him be if it helps distract him. But now, not only on weekdays, he often goes out alone on weekends too. And sometimes he comes home close to midnight or even after the date changes. Since his parents passed away, Ken's increased outings have made me increasingly suspicious. I once asked Ken about it.
Don't you think you've been going out too much lately? Let's go out for dinner together sometimes.
But Ken looked at me irritably and said, what's the big deal now?
We're just the two of us at home anyway, let me have some time to breathe outside.
I thought, what's that supposed to mean as if he's reluctant to spend time with me? I became even more suspicious of Ken. One day, as the day for burning trash was approaching, I decided to collect the trash from Ken's room. I found a receipt facing up in the trash can. Normally, I wouldn't pay it any mind, but given Ken's recent behavior, I reached into the trash can to check the receipt. There were 2 receipts stacked together.
What's this? One is a receipt for 2 movie tickets, and the other is a restaurant receipt. This restaurant, isn't it that fancy French place in front of the station? Why would he go there?
Moreover, both receipts indicated service for 2, and judging by the time printed on them, it seemed he went to the restaurant after watching the movie. It was certain he went with another woman, I sensed. It definitely wasn't the behavior of going out with a same-sex friend. Since Ken and I hadn't gone out together in a long time, anger towards the woman I had yet to meet began to bubble up inside me. But this alone isn't enough evidence. Looks like I have no choice but to rely on a detective agency. I determined. I paid the investigation fee and requested an investigation into Ken's infidelity. A few days later, when I thought Ken would be coming home late at night, he returned in a panicked state just after noon. I carried a large amount of cardboard boxes.
Welcome back.
What's with those boxes?
Out of the way!
Ignoring my words, Ken rushed into the living room and started frantically packing my belongings into the boxes.
Hey, what are you doing?
Ken, slightly excited, was desperately packing my stuff. His behavior was disturbing.
Hey! That's my stuff. Don't just pack it up without asking.
As I grabbed his arm trying to stop him, Ken said with a laugh.
I'm gonna live in this house with my lover. We're getting a divorce, get out. Lover? Divorce? Yeah, that's right, so I need to get your stuff out as soon as possible.
I had no idea why Ken was in such a hurry. As I stood there dumbfounded, watching Ken, an unfamiliar woman entered the living room.
Ken, wait. You're rushing too much.
My husband hadn't locked the front door, so the woman walked in boldly from the front.
Sorry. Got too excited.
Who is this person?
Oh, let me introduce her. This is Sarah, she works in sales at my office. You must be the wife? Nice to meet you, I'm Sarah. Your husband has always been so helpful at work.
Sarah, tilting her head in a cutesy manner, was provoking me. What annoyed me the most was Ken introducing his affair partner to me with such casualness as if she were just another colleague.
I'm gonna live in this house with her, so you need to leave as soon as possible.
Ken said again.
You can't just spring this on me and expect me to agree just like that.
I demanded an explanation. Then, scratching his temple with his finger and somewhat sheepishly, Ken began.
I was just having tea at a cafe with her, and she told me she's pregnant. I was so happy, I got carried away and decided to divorce you and remarry her right away. Ken just left me and ran home, saying he's gonna kick his wife out. Talk about being in a hurry. Seriously, my bad.
Ken replied. Ignoring me, Ken and Sarah shared a laugh, entering their own little world. To break into their world, I raised my voice louder than usual.
Didn't we say we were going to enjoy our time together, even if it's just the two of us, no kids?
Finally, Ken turned his face towards me from Sarah.
But when it actually happened, I was super happy, you know? I realized, yeah, I really did want to be a father.
Ken's words made my heart shrink. And then Sarah added insult to injury. Well, it's perfect timing since both parents passed away. He's been saying we could finally live together if he just kicked his wife out.
What? Been saying? How long have you two been having an affair?
I asked, bothered by Sarah's tone. Huh?
Since last year, I guess. Since I started handling Ken's sales administration. So, you've been together even before his parents passed away?
Yeah.
Couldn't spend much time with him, weekdays or weekends, because his parents were at home. But now, with them gone, we don't have to worry about getting caught. So that's why there were more outings after the two of them passed away.
I trembled with anger at the selfish behavior of this adulterous couple. Moreover, the reason he gave for working late and immersing himself in work due to grief was also a lie. I could hear the sound of my feelings for Ken cooling down deep inside me. I asked Ken calmly, "Are you really okay with getting divorced?" Pressing for an answer, Ken yelled back,
"Stop nagging! I'm gonna live happily with Sarah and our upcoming baby."
His expression was full of anger, a stark contrast to the happiness he showed earlier. Convinced he was in a winning position, I couldn't help but laugh.
Ha ha, oh, this is hilarious.
What's so funny? You're creepy. Ken looked at me with genuine disgust. As he laughed, unaware of an important detail, I decided to enlighten him.
I don't mind the divorce, but this house and land were inherited from your late parents to me. So the ones who are leaving will be you guys, nuts. What?
Oh, my apologies, the one who's leaving is you. I inadvertently let slip in rude language and quickly corrected myself.
What do you mean it's inherited by you? Normally, it should be me, the actual son, right?
Unfortunately, the house is in my name.
Why the heck is that happening? Explain.
Ken, with an incredulous look, demanded an explanation. And rightly so, since he was being told that his own family home wasn't his.
The truth is, my in-laws gifted me this house through a living will while they were still alive. A living will? I've never heard a word about this.
I figured as much. Your parents were worried about how carelessly you handle money, so they entrusted the house to me. With property taxes on the house, they probably felt it was too risky to leave it in your hands, given your lack of financial sense. Ken was notoriously extravagant with money. He had a passion for motorcycles, often splurging on parts and whatnot. There were times he'd spend his entire paycheck and, trying not to let me find out, would borrow money from his parents. Ken thought I was unaware of this, but I was well informed by my in-laws.
You really weren't trusted by your own parents, were you? Otherwise, they wouldn't have made their son's wife the homeowner. Shut up! Damn it, what unnecessary thing did my folks do?
Ken looked extremely foolish complaining about the deceased. Then, as if struck by a sudden idea, he brightened up and said,
That's right, there should be inheritance tax. There's no way you, with just a clerical job, could afford that.
Is this guy an idiot? It's been gifted through a living will, so obviously, the payment's been settled. I thought, dumbfounded. I felt no obligation to enlighten him, but I was tempted to correct his assumption about my salary being low.
Do you think they'd done nothing about inheritance tax? My in-laws gifted me just under the tax threshold each year, so I didn't have to pay anything extra. Seriously?
Ken was taken aback, unaware of such a strategy.
And about my salary, it's actually higher than yours. No way! You're doing just a clerical job.
I was irked by the term just a clerical, but chose to ignore it.
My company pays well even for clerical roles, and the bonuses are significantly above average.
It might be hard for you to imagine, working at a small company. Even a clerical work can earn this much. Ken clenched his fist and glared at me.
How can you say that when you're always leaving work on time and seem so relaxed at home before me? I won't accept that you earn more than I do.
There's nothing to admit. I've been the one earning more ever since we got married. No way. Ken, shocked to his core, looked like he was about to cry any moment.
You thought I was making about the same as she since she's also in an administrative job, didn't you?
I hit the nail on the head, and Ken twitched.
Untrusted by your own parents, out-earned by your wife, you've got nothing going for you right now.
As I said that, Ken, mixed with shame and frustration, snapped back in a voice filled with indignation.
All this time, working hard in sales, you were looking down on me every month when you saw my paycheck. I've never thought that.
We don't have kids, so we can live comfortably as is.
I'm not that kind of woman.
I made it clear to Ken that I wasn't such kind of woman. No, you definitely looked down on me. But it seemed Ken was no longer willing to listen to me. I felt sad about what our marriage had come to. Then, Ken finally blurted out.
You've been conspiring with my folks behind my back, taking everything from me. I can't stand being in this house with a cunning woman like you. I'm divorcing you. I'll let you have this house because it makes me sick. Wait, that's not it.
Huh? What do you mean? Sarah, who had been quiet until now, cut into the conversation.
This house is fully paid off, so no rent. You said you'd make me a stay-at-home wife, didn't you?
Making such promises, what a man.
I can't say that anymore. Keep working like you always have. What? That's terrible. How can I keep working as usual when we're going to have a baby?
I wanted to block my ears from their escalating argument. I wished they'd take this outside. I wanted to end this situation, so I let Ken in on another truth he didn't know.
Don't worry, Sarah. You can always rely on your other boyfriend.
Sarah was shocked by the sudden exposure of her having another lover.
How do you know? Hey, what's this about another lover, Sarah? Were you cheating on me too?
You're the same kind since you've been cheating on me. I thought in disgust. A low-grade comedy sketch unfolded before me, and my abs were on the brink of collapse. Unconcerned about me, the argument between the two escalated.
Cheating? You're cheating too, with me, Ken. Who do you think you are? But you told me I was the only one for you. Were you lying to me? That's rich coming from you. Weren't you the one who lied about this house being owned, Ken? I honestly didn't know. It's not like I lied on purpose. Can't trust you.
Ken seemed about to grab Sarah in anger. I didn't want any violence in this house, so I hurriedly stepped between them. Now, calm down, it's okay, Ken. Sarah's other boyfriend is married, too.
You knew that too?
Yes. When I suspected you of cheating, Ken, I hired a detective. Of course, I found out about Sarah right away. Then I had them dig a little deeper into Sarah. Turns out, you're not the only married man she's seeing. Sarah bit her lower lip and looked down. But it seems like her other boyfriend has no intention of leaving his wife. So, Ken, you're in luck. I nudged Ken's shoulder lightly.
Are you out of your mind?
Yes, I've been sane the whole time. My feelings for you cooled off completely after you started packing my things. As you wish, I'll grant you a divorce. You mentioned hiring a detective, right? Yes, I did.
So, you knew I was cheating and kept quiet about it for a while.
That seems to be the case, yes. At my words, Ken made an indescribable face.
Why didn't you say anything? Did you think I was some clueless husband who wouldn't realize he's being cheated on?
No, it's not like that. I was just waiting for you to bring up divorce first. It seemed like a good way to get a larger settlement.
Damn. I knew you had a bad character.
Realizing he had been played, Ken collapsed to his knees, placing his hands on the floor. Seeing Ken's dumbfounded state made me think. I wondered if Ken had realized the other possibility yet. Do I really have to spell it out for them? I thought to myself. I knelt down to match eye level with Ken. Hey, don't you have any doubts?
About what?
Ken, seemingly indifferent, asked as if wondering if there was still something more. Whether Sarah's baby is really yours.
Ah.
When I felt it finally dawned on him, Sarah quickly retorted.
Hey, don't say things like that.
But it's strange, isn't it?
Even after being married for 6 years, we never had a child. Maybe the problem was on your end?
Sarah scoffed at me with disdain. But over these 6 years, did she really think I never doubted my own body? I thought so too, so I went to the doctor by myself. But they found nothing wrong. Sarah's face gradually turned pale. Then Ken confronted her.
Hey, tell me she's lying. Please say it's not true. Quiet, I don't know which it is either. You're being too irresponsible.
This is the worst mess. Caught in the middle, I sighed and looked up at the ceiling.
What's this? You were trying to make me raise a child that's not mine? I told you, it's not necessarily like that.
The two of them continued their petty back and forth. I watched their exchange, turning my head from right to left.
Can we wrap this up soon?
Hearing my voice, both turned towards me simultaneously. Having witnessed their intense exchange, my neck was at its limit. I looked Sarah directly in the eyes.
Sarah, I'm going to sue you for damages. You would do something so cruel to me while I'm pregnant? There's no room for sympathy for you once you've cheated. Don't forget the terrible thing you did by destroying someone's family.
Unable to say anything, Sarah just swallowed hard and kept silent. Then, I turned to Ken, demanding alimony from him in the same manner.
I'm sorry. I was out of my mind. Please reconsider the divorce. Being kicked out of the house, living with a child that might not even be yours and you're a fair partner, you wouldn't want that, right? That's why you wouldn't want a divorce.
Ken desperately nodded while looking into my eyes. However, my feelings for Ken had already changed, not enough to reconsider. I stepped away from Ken and said in as cold a voice as I could muster.
Please handle the rest through a lawyer.
Faced with my firm stance, Ken suddenly changed his attitude.
What's wrong with you, such a heartless woman? Don't you have any feelings for me anymore? After all the cheating and betrayal, and suddenly trying to move in with your mistress while packing my belongings in boxes and trying to kick me out, who's the heartless one here?
Ken had no comeback to the truth I spoke. Ken and I glared at each other for about 10 seconds. Then, suddenly, Ken averted his gaze and spat out.
You'll regret it later, being a divorced woman in her 30s. Just you wait and live your lonely days.
That must have been the only comeback he could think of. Poor man, I thought.
Unfortunately, as long as I work at my current job, I won't have financial troubles. Plus, I heard divorced women in their early 30s are quite popular.
Even faced with my composure, Ken twisted his mouth and glared at me. Then, Ken left the house with Sarah. They finally left. I sighed deeply and sank into the sofa. Oh, I need to contact a lawyer. I started searching online for a law firm specializing in alimony issues. After the divorce was officially decided, I lived alone in this house for a while. 3 months flew by quickly, and I was living a peaceful life while working. What nice weather. I made myself a cup of tea and savored the relaxed morning of my day off. Then, the doorbell rang. Who could it be this early in the morning? Curious, I checked the monitor and saw Ken, whom I thought I had divorced. Hello? I couldn't hide my irritation at having my precious time off ruined, and I snapped coldly. The moment my voice came through the intercom, Ken lifted his eyes, which he had been keeping down.
Jolie, please open up. I've got something I want to talk about.
Ken seemed to be in a hurry for some reason. Whether he was too close to the camera or not, seeing Ken's face in extreme close-up on the monitor was unbearable.
I have nothing I want to talk about with you.
Oh, there was one thing. Hurry up and pay the alimony already. Ken had been behind on his alimony payments. Not that it really affected my living situation, but the thought that he might believe he could get away with not paying was somewhat irritating.
That's what I wanted to talk about. I want to meet and discuss this face to face.
Suddenly, Ken disappeared from the monitor. Panicked about what he might be up to, I hurriedly opened the door to check. There was Ken, prostrating himself on the front step.
Hey, cut it out!
Despite the public path nearby, Ken, oblivious to his surroundings, finally broke me down, and I let him inside the entrance.
Prostrating yourself? What were you thinking?
You're still as inconsiderate as ever.
I'm sorry.
Ken was much more subdued than the last time we met.
So, what brings you here all of a sudden?
I'm not reducing the alimony.
Just hear me out.
I had expected as much. Given the delay in alimony payments, I could guess the state of Ken's current living situation. After we divorced, I started looking for a place with Sarah. But, you know, in New York, it's pretty expensive. That's true. Especially with a baby on the way. A one-bedroom apartment must be cramped, right? Besides, Ken was known to blow money on hobbies and luxuries, so he probably didn't have any savings.
In the end, we rented an apartment, but living in such a small space with two people, you know, it gets stressful. Sarah's salary isn't high, and with my income, we can't live like we used to and pay rent, let alone save money or afford alimony. Well, if you were spending on hobbies and dining at fancy hotels, of course, you'd have to cut back. Trim your food budget, and you'd be surprised what you can manage.
Ashamed, Ken looked down as I spoke common sense.
I realized that and told Sarah we needed to budget, but she blames you for our situation, saying it's up to me to fix it.
Ken's words were a jumbled mess, trying to make his point without getting to it, causing me to cross my arms in irritation. So, what are you trying to say in the end?
I'm trying to say, if we can be together again.
Huh? I was taken aback by Ken's unexpected suggestion. What on earth was going on in his head?
Get back together? You remarried Sarah, didn't you?
That was last week. We got divorced.
Already?
Had this man experienced both marriage and divorce within 3 months?
Sarah got fed up with the frugal lifestyle and left, leaving a divorce note. My parents, knowing the situation, said they'd pay the alimony to you.
That's good to hear. I was surprised that Sarah intended to pay alimony, but relieved it seemed I'd be able to recover it successfully. And what about you? Ken placed his hands on his knees and hung his head.
That's why I'm asking for a do-over. It's hard paying rent while also covering alimony. Do you even realize how selfish you're being after causing all this mess? Of course I do. You must be lonely living in this house all by yourself, right?
I thought Ken might have reflected a bit, but realizing he still considered himself in a superior position by implying I was lonely showed his true colors.
Is that how you ask for a favor? With unnecessary comments. It's amazing you managed to work in sales with that attitude. Look at you, getting all high and mighty just because someone's trying to be humble.
That's your true nature. Ken grimaced as if he realized he'd made a mistake. He wanted to get back together and return to a better standard of living but didn't want to be in a position lower than mine. There's no way I could go back to being with someone as selfish as Ken. Sorry, but I'm not getting back together with you. Why not? You must be lonely living all by yourself. Wouldn't it be convenient for both of us if we got back together? It might be convenient for you. The reason we can't get back together is that I'm already seeing someone. Ken must not have expected me to have a new partner. He stood there, mouth agape.
You've got a new boyfriend within 3 months of our divorce? What a player! I don't need to hear that from someone who married and divorced within 3 months.
I've always thought so, but Ken seems to lack the ability to see himself objectively. There are way too many boomerang comments.
What kind of guy are you even dealing with?
A colleague from the same company. We're the same age, by the way. He's in sales, just like Ken, but he earns more than Ken and doesn't seem to waste money. Plus, he's mentally stable.
Are you mocking my salary again? At least he's not someone whose money disappears as soon as he spends it. Plus, when the company was making fun of my divorce, he was the one who approached me. He said he'd been interested in me for a while but gave up because I was married. Don't you think that makes him a different kind of person from you? Give me a break. If he's such a great guy, why doesn't he marry you right away? If he hasn't, maybe he's just playing around.
Sigh. Are you serious? A sigh escaped due to Ken's ignorance.
Plus, from today, he'll be living here. His stuff is arriving this afternoon. So, I won't be seeing you ever again.
Too late, huh? Did he think there was a chance to get back together with me? I wanted to applaud his optimism.
That's the situation, so please go back and don't come here anymore. You're gonna get tired of your new boyfriend too. It's just your personality. Don't come crying to me when that happens.
Rest assured. Even if we break up, I'll never come crying to you.
Don't regret it.
With those words, Ken slammed the door so hard it nearly broke. Ken was confused whether he wanted to cling to me or insult me, just like the day we decided to divorce. At that time, I forgave Ken and did not divorce him, and I thought that there was no way I could have continued with such an unstable person. 2 months after Ken's attack, I persevered and remarried my colleague. Even after we got married, he remains calm and I feel the happiest I've ever been in my life. Due to his influence, we both went fishing on holidays and became more active. Divorcing Ken was the right thing to do. I felt like praising my decision. The alimony from Ken has remained unpaid. After hearing about Ken's current situation from the lawyer in charge, I think it will be a while before he can pay. After that, Ken moved to an apartment where the rent was even cheaper. He even sold the motorcycle he cherished. He's cutting down on daily meals to essentials like beans, saving almost all his salary for the alimony payments. But what's even worse, it seems Sarah, who was supposed to be divorced, has come back to Ken's place. Sarah went back to her parents' house, but apparently, they told her to get child support from Ken. Ken seems to be more worn out than ever, struggling with the triple burden of my alimony, his living expenses, and child support for Sarah. However, hearing about my ex-husband's situation didn't stir anything in my heart. I just listened silently to the reports from the lawyer. Ken proposed to reduce the alimony again, but I rejected it. No matter how long it takes, I intend to make him pay the full amount. I won't feel sorry for myself unless he faces the consequences of his actions. With that thought, I made tea for 2 and started to drink slowly. Ken's matter is completely out of my mind now. Savoring my current happiness, I looked outside.
How about that? Better than Noah, huh?
Noah slumped to the ground upon hearing Tom's voice from the pet camera. I too collapsed to the floor in shock. On New Year's Eve night, my husband and I, who had gone back to my in-laws' house, were speechless at the sight of my husband and our son's wife back at our own home. The smartphone continued to broadcast Tom and Natalie getting cozy. We are now an old couple. Even though we knew the love we had at the beginning of our marriage had turned into just familial love, it was still shocking.
Let's go. We're not letting those two do whatever they please,
I said to a dejected Noah. And so, we rushed home in the car driven by Sandy, my sister-in-law. My name is Sally Evans. My husband Tom, our only son and firstborn Noah, and his wife Natalie. And we live with our parakeet, Pippi, 4 people and 1 pet. Noah and Natalie got married a few months ago. I had known about Natalie since they were dating. She seemed to like Noah and even confessed to him. Since they started dating, Noah has always taken great care of Natalie, and he often talked to me about her.
I'd like to meet Natalie. I'll bring her over next time.
As a parent, it's natural to be curious about your child's partner. I was really looking forward to meeting her. A few months passed, and as promised, Noah brought Natalie over. She had long waved hair and dressed fashionably. Exactly the impression of a modern young woman. "This is a gift for you," she said, offering me macarons from a famous bakery.
You went out of your way for this? These are hard to get without standing in line, aren't they? I'm delighted,
I replied, accepting them and expressing my thanks. Full of curiosity about her, I asked various questions. But, talking to her, I felt something was off. Natalie wouldn't look me in the eye. Was she shy? If that was the case, it couldn't be helped. I figured the best way to become friends was to keep smiling and talking to her.
Hey! If you're up for it, how about joining us for dinner tonight? You can eat at our place, and Noah can drive you home?
Noah agreed, and Natalie nodded. I was excited to cook dinner for 4. While I was preparing, Natalie spent time in Noah's room, just the two of them. A little break probably did them good. As evening came, Tom came home, and the 4 of us sat down to eat. Tonight's dinner was beef stew cooked in a pressure cooker and a salad.
There's plenty, so don't be shy about getting seconds, Natalie.
She still wouldn't meet my eyes, but she nodded, and I was satisfied. However, during the meal, I felt a second wave of discomfort. She was making eye contact and smiling in conversation with my husband.
What is it about Noah that you fell in love with? His kindness.
They both said it, looking happy. I joined in.
Noah does have his moments of kindness. Even Mom's chiming in now. You usually don't give compliments.
Noah and Tom laughed. But amidst this, Natalie didn't smile. That's when it hit me. She wasn't even offering a courtesy laugh or making eye contact. She probably had no intention of getting along with me. Had I been disliked within just a few hours of meeting? I was stewing in my thoughts, but Tom and Noah seemed oblivious. After dinner, Noah drove Natalie home. That's when I asked Tom about his impression of her.
She's such a good kid, isn't she? Why don't you smile like that, Sally? Charm is a woman's best asset.
I bristled at his tone, but Tom must have taken a liking to her. I thought it best not to voice my dissatisfaction and simply smiled, saying, "Sure." He visited us several times after that, and it was always the same. I was enduring, thinking they would break up eventually, but one day, Noah announced he had decided to marry Natalie. Tom accepted this news with joy. But for me, it was a despair. Praying for their breakup, the last thing I expected was a marriage. I couldn't support it, but I wished for Noah's happiness without objecting. Months later, the two had a smooth wedding ceremony. Natalie's parents were civil servants, working at the city hall. They seemed like solid people. I resolved to take my grievances against her to the grave as I watched the happy couple chatting at the high table. During the wedding reception, I excused myself to the restroom. There, I overheard an unbelievable conversation.
Can you believe they actually got married?
It must have been a college friend attending. They seemed to be mutual acquaintances. Despite knowing it was wrong, I was curious and eavesdropped.
Natalie definitely doesn't seem like she'd be good with mom friends. No one would want to be friends with someone like that. She acts as if all women are her enemies. She's so two-faced. If it weren't for Noah, no girls would have come to the wedding.
The laughter of 2 young women. All women are enemies. That phrase oddly resonated with me. Generally, you'd think speaking ill of someone at such a place is more uncouth. Yet, given how much dissatisfaction I've accumulated against Natalie, I couldn't help but think there must be a reason for such gossip here too. But it was too late. Noah had married her. I regretted not having strongly dissuaded him, but it was out of my hands now. The wedding was supposed to be a joyous occasion, yet I couldn't sincerely celebrate, and it ended with me feeling this way. I was supposed to wish for their happiness, but now, all I can do is pray that Noah doesn't end up unhappy. One day, I received an invitation to dine from Tom's sister, Sandy. Tom's parents, who are over 80, live together at home, his mother still spry for her age and his father with bad legs. However, Sandy, concerned about leaving the elderly parents to live by themselves for too long, moved back to live with them. Sandy is married, but her husband is on a solo assignment right now, so it's just the three of them living together. She's always been kind to me, treating me like her real sister. I immediately accepted the invitation and decided to leave Tom's dinner to Natalie, heading out. "You don't have to keep Sandy company. She's just bored," Tom said, always one to add an extra word. I retorted, "I'm looking forward to seeing your sister too. I haven't met her since Noah's wedding, so I'm going to enjoy some time with her. Housewives sure have it easy." As if he's one to talk, retired, and doing nothing at home. I thought to myself, but couldn't be bothered to argue back. When the day came, I had a great time with Sandy. "You know, I found this funny post the other day," Sandy said over dinner, handing me her smartphone. "It's on social media, but it's really interesting. This person always posts complaints, but I can't help but look," Sandy said, amused. "I'm not tech-savvy, only using messaging apps on social media. However, venting somewhere like this might not be a bad idea." Encouraged by Sandy, I signed up and created an account, following someone to see their posts. I followed the person Sandy mentioned and saw their posts. A live-in daughter-in-law? Wants to kick out the mother-in-law? Wow, there are such people, huh? I exclaimed in surprise. It was shockingly direct. Social media must be like that. For someone not used to it, it's quite stimulating. I'm a parent myself, but indeed, living together is hard, so I end up looking. Did Noah and Natalie say they wanted to live together? Yes. Well, you probably don't think like this, but you have to be careful not to be disliked by Natalie, Sally. Sandy laughed. All I could muster was a bitter smile in response. It was too embarrassing to admit that I seemed to be disliked without having done anything. Yet, I still wanted to get along with her. After seeing this live-in daughter-in-law's social media, I thought about studying what things she disliked. That night, a new post had appeared that wasn't there during the day. "What? Today was a happy day without my mother-in-law around. I wish she'd never come back." I was stunned by that shocking sentence. What on earth did this mother-in-law do to her? Curiosity got the better of me, and I scrolled down. And there it was, an onslaught of insults and harsh words. My finger, which had been lightly scrolling through as if it were someone else's business, froze on a particular post. "The wedding, it's the same day as Noah's." Yes. It seemed that person had their wedding on the same day as Noah and Natalie. The mother-in-law's formal dress, so tacky, lol. My muttered words trailed off. No wonder, because in the image attached to that post, I was pictured. The image was edited, but I was certain it was me, and my hands began to tremble. Could this really be Natalie? Could something like that happen? Yet, I couldn't convince myself it was someone else. "Sally, aren't you going to sleep?" Tom's voice reached me, lost in thought. Startled, I turned off the smartphone. "Yeah, I'm going to bed now." Lying in my bed, I said goodnight. My heart was pounding painfully. It's not often one directly receives malice intended for oneself. Remembering a friend's words at the wedding that all women are enemies to her, I spent a sleepless night. To understand why I was disliked, I began to check those posts whenever I had time. Laundry, don't mix ours together. A bath after the mother-in-law? Absolutely not. I wish that bird would just disappear already. There were insults directed at Pippi, and times when what was being said was clearly off the rails. Living together is just like that. It was you who understood and stepped forward. Natalie's social media is nothing but a list of selfish claims, without even a reasonable claim about why she disliked me. I'm just getting more and more frustrated. The real-life Natalie is still the same, she responds and doesn't complain. How much better it would be if she just said it directly. Fortunately, the end of the year is near. At the end of every year, Tom goes back to his parents' place in Nebraska with me. I was hoping to have a slow talk with Sandy included, to get them to understand my feelings. However, Tom suddenly said he's not gonna go back this year.
Why?
I asked, and he said with an awkward look.
I had a fight over Dad with my sister the other day. That's why I don't want to see her. Then all the more reason you should go and talk.
My suggestion was not accepted, and Tom fell silent. What a childish excuse, not wanting to see someone because of a fight. Now, I can't even bring up that consultation. Natalie is going back to her parents' house alone, and I'll be staying here by myself. Why don't you take Noah with you this time, show my dad and mom their grandkid's face? He doesn't seem to want to go back at all. But, on the flip side, this might be a chance to talk to Noah. No choice then. Reluctantly accepting Tom's suggestion, I decided to go back to my husband's parents' house with Noah.
Then I'm off. Take care on your way back, Natalie. Give my regards to your mom and dad. Sure. Noah, say hi to your grandparents for me. I'll come to greet them next time too.
Natalie's words seemed to satisfy both Noah and Tom. Those words are probably a lie, too. I had been asked to help with the end-of-year cleaning, so we left home in the morning, even though it's just a few minutes by car. Natalie had finished preparing for her return home and planned to leave before noon. I told Tom he should at least make a Christmas greeting. So, it was decided that he would just pop by his parents' house for the Christmas greeting, and spend the New Year's Eve alone in this house, but Pippi is here. Since I asked him to care for Pippi, I was able to leave the house with peace of mind. The deep cleaning was done by the evening. For dinner, Sandy had prepared a special Christmas feast, and we enjoyed our meal together. The star of the conversation was Noah, who got married this year. I hesitated to bring up my concern as Noah proudly talked about Natalie.
You look down. Tired?
After dinner, my in-laws went to their bedroom, and Noah headed to the bath. As Sandy and I were cleaning up, she asked me, "So,
I have something I want to talk about. It's about this cohabiting wife on social media."
"Oh, that person, right? Funny, isn't she?" Sandy laughed. I stopped what I was doing and whispered with a strained voice,
"It seems she's like Natalie."
Sandy's complexion changed at my words. She must not have imagined it. Neither did I, of course. I wanted to think it was impossible. Sandy quickly checked the account, then said with a relieved voice, "That's impossible. After all, Natalie is at her parents' home, right?" Sandy said this while showing me the screen of her smartphone. It was displaying the post the cohabiting wife had just shared. Contrary to Sandy's relief, I was stunned by what I saw. No intruders, so it's lovey-dovey time with darling. Surely, this person is alone with her husband. Noah is here, so it's impossible. Normally, that's what one would think. But I had an unsettling feeling.
I'm done with the bath. Mom, you should go in too. What's wrong?
I couldn't hear Noah's voice as I trembled, turning to the smartphone.
Sandy, can I have some water?
My mother-in-law had returned to the bedroom but came back, yet I couldn't take my eyes off the smartphone. With trepidation, I opened the pet camera app that we have at home. Our parrot, Pippi, is in my bedroom, not the living room, while I'm away. It seemed more peaceful that way, and even though I said we were about to leave, Natalie was still at home. I could tell Pippi was getting annoyed because I saw it on social media, just to be safe. Since it's not the living room, I might not know what the house looks like. Still, I thought I might catch some voices, so I turned on the camera.
What?
But when I saw it, I was speechless. On the camera, the shadows of two people in the midst of it all were visible on the bed.
What's wrong?
Sandy asked me anxiously. I silently turned up the volume on my phone to the max.
How about it? Better than Noah, right? Hee hee, yes. Darling is the best.
The voices I heard were Tom's, and then Natalie's. Noah hurriedly peered into my smartphone. Sandy, the mother-in-law, and I were all frozen, listening to those voices coming from my phone.
What is this?
Noah yelled at me loudly.
I don't know. When I turned on the pet camera, this came up. What do you mean? Is this live?
I nodded in response to Sandy's words. The mother-in-law still didn't seem to understand the situation, just staring at us in astonishment.
It's Natalie and Dad, right? I can't believe this.
Noah headed to the couch and then just collapsed onto it. I sat down on the floor too. The smartphone still streamed the two of them flirting. Let's go, Sandy said. But neither Noah nor I could respond. I didn't care much for Natalie, but Noah was betrayed by the two people he loved the most. His shock must be greater than mine. Thinking of my son, I also tried to pull myself together, slowly stood up, and spoke to Noah.
Noah, are you okay?
There's no way he could be. But I couldn't find any other words. Noah just nodded slightly, his head hanging low.
Let's go. We won't let those two do as they please. Yeah.
Noah nodded firmly to my words. Sandy explained the situation to my mother-in-law. Without her, I wonder what would have become of us. I truly felt grateful. The 10 minutes it took to get home were silent between Noah and me. Sandy tried to make conversation, caring for us, but we couldn't hear anything. Noah and I, an old couple. I had seen our love from the beginning of our marriage turn into just familial love, but it was still a shock. Arriving home felt incredibly long, but eventually, we got there. Taking a deep breath and bracing myself, I burst through the front door and headed straight to my room.
What are you two doing?
I yelled as I opened the door. The two of them jumped up from the bed at the sound of my voice.
Ah! What the?
Natalie scrambled to cover herself and gather her clothes, while Tom shielded himself with a blanket.
What the heck, seriously? Natalie! What's this about?
Noah's voice was filled with anger, perhaps more from shock than anything else. He scolded them both with his powerful voice.
Wait, it's a misunderstanding,
Tom said even now. Sandy, Tom's own sister, was the one to express her anger at him. She yelled at Tom, still recording on her smartphone.
What misunderstanding? We've been watching through Pippi's pet camera. At your age, being called darling? It's embarrassingly shameful.
At those words, both Tom and Natalie turned pale. They probably didn't realize Pippi was in this room. And of course, they were unaware of the camera's existence. Natalie, once she understood the situation, cried out exaggeratedly.
Noah! I'm so sorry. I was forced by your father to call him darling, and today he forced me.
Natalie cried miserably, and Tom was taken aback.
Natty! You said you loved me. It was a lie, obviously.
We were appalled by their exchange. Betrayed so easily, Tom just slumped down, motionless. Only Natalie's crying filled the room. Leaving the two in the house, we returned to my in-laws' home, and even though it was Christmas time, there was no sense of celebration. My mother-in-law and father-in-law, who had been briefed by Sandy, were waiting for us. Sally, sorry about Tom, my mother-in-law said with an apologetic look. Sandy also looked sorry next to her. I don't blame them at all, and I love Sandy and my in-laws. But their kindness touched a nerve, and tears flowed endlessly from my eyes. My mother-in-law started crying too. Why do we have to suffer because of them? I swore never to forgive them. Right after the new year, I consulted a lawyer. Of course, it was about divorce, but not just that.
This is her account. It's clearly defamation and insult towards me. Can we also claim damages for this?
I handed my smartphone to the lawyer. The lawyer saved posts that could serve as evidence. There were many posts I had overlooked due to my unfamiliarity, and the more we searched, the more insults we found. This is terrible, the lawyer muttered with a wry smile. However, he assured me.
It must be disheartening to see all these malicious words now, but I will surely turn them into a mountain of gold. Don't let it get to you bad, If anything else gets posted, think of it as more evidence to be happy about.
Seeing me downcast, he said that to me. How much those words saved me.
Please take care of this for me.
I firmly shook hands with the lawyer. I was sure everything would be okay if I left it to this lawyer. Without betraying my feelings, the lawyer claimed alimony from Tom for the divorce. And also demanded alimony for infidelity plus damages for defamation from Natalie. Tom was stunned. But still not waking up to reality, he said, "It can't be helped. It's for my happiness with Natty. Do as you like," allowing me to proceed with the divorce preparations. Such a foolish man, despite being betrayed once. It'll be too late for regrets later. I decided to squeeze everything out of Tom thoroughly. Not only alimony, but he also said he'd give me the house. He must be planning to return to his parents' home. Oblivious to his parents-in-law's fury. Smirking inside, my discussion with Tom was over. Next was Natalie. On the lawyer's suggestion, we decided to meet with Tom and Natalie separately, and the day came for Natalie, the lawyer, Noah, and me.
No. I don't want a divorce. I was forced to do it against my will. I'm the victim here.
Natalie refused the divorce. However, Noah seemed to have lost his love for her, and her words did not resonate.
Do you want the video played in court? It's better for you to agree before it goes to trial.
Natalie fell silent at those words.
Besides, I know how you've been treating my mom poorly all this time. So, the alimony for my mom and for me combined is $70,000. You're going to pay it. $70,000?
Natalie's face changed color upon hearing the amount. Then, the lawyer presented printouts of the numerous posts on social media Natalie had written. She must have known what was coming. Natalie froze as she looked down at them.
You had relationships not only with your father-in-law but with other men too. This D refers to your sugar daddy, doesn't it? No, that's not what this is. Were you also getting money from your father-in-law?
The lawyer cut straight to the point, making Natalie stutter in response. It was a moment she could have claimed ignorance about the account, but perhaps she couldn't think fast at that moment. It was as good as admitting it was hers. We've also gathered solid evidence of the slander against Mrs. Sally Evans, 61, your mother-in-law, S. Photos of Sally and her clothing were posted along with the slander. It's enough to identify her. You could be facing charges of insult and defamation. I'm sorry, so sorry. Natalie began to prostrate herself in apology.
Apologies now won't reduce the compensation. If you have time to slander people on social media, better work hard and pay up.
She didn't respond. Watching Natalie continue to sob, head bowed to the floor, Noah and I exchanged relieved smiles with the lawyer. It was finally over. Tom seemed to be preparing to leave, busily packing his suitcase. There was a noticeable air of excitement about him.
Have you decided where you're going?
I'm heading back to my parents. I've really done you wrong. I'll make sure to pay the compensation. Oh, is Natalie ready? With that, Tom hurried out of the room. Since that day, Tom and Natalie had been staying in separate hotels. I didn't want to see his face, though I hadn't specified which hotel. Why separate hotels? Everyone but Tom could guess the reason.
Natty, you ready? Shall we go?
At Tom's words, Natalie also came out with her luggage. However, when she saw Tom, she glared at him, snorted, and averted his gaze.
Don't call me Natty, it's creepy. Natty! Why should I have to live with you?
Tom was silent, perhaps shocked by her words.
You've ruined my life. Shame on you for messing with your son's wife.
I couldn't help but laugh. It was ironic coming from her, but it must have been a significant blow to Tom. Don't contact me ever again, darling. I don't even want to remember you. With that, Natalie left on her own. Tom stood in the doorway, a picture of despair. As I was passing by, I accidentally dropped a piece of paper. Oh, my apologies. I dropped this. Tom turned pale at the sight. Seriously, Tom is so creepy.
I'm only putting up with him for $1,000, but every time he calls me darling, I get the chills.
Perhaps she couldn't write the proper term father-in-law. But then, writing his real name seems questionable too. Tom had been informed by the lawyer about Natalie's account, and that we were holding on to a copy of that post as evidence. He probably never imagined it would include something about himself. Tom just stood there, dazed in the entryway for a while. It seems Natalie has returned to her parents' house. However, her parents were furious upon hearing about the incident. She wasn't allowed in the house and is now hopping from one sugar daddy to another, continuing her sugar baby lifestyle. Natalie had easily gotten her hands on a lot of money. Such a lifestyle couldn't last forever. She probably hasn't realized that the real hell is just beginning. As he declared, Tom went back to his parents' house. But he wasn't allowed in there either. His in-laws kicked him out. Tom, apparently not expecting to be unable to return to his own home, came back here, but he was the one who said he would give up this house. I have no intention of letting him live here. Reluctantly, it seems he rented an apartment near our house and started living there, but he seems to want to come back, as he's been spotted lurking around the neighborhood. Because it was so creepy, I reported him as a stalker. Tom was issued a restraining order. I don't know what happened after that, but he's probably living a lonely old age by himself. Several years later, Noah got remarried. After such an incident, I was scared of what kind of person it would be this time, but the new wife is kind to me too. The eldest son and his wife bought a house nearby, and they had a baby. I'm very happy, but I try not to interfere too much, hoping to maintain a good distance and relationship moving forward. I've become a single person living with my pet, Pippi, but my eldest son and his wife, as well as Sandy, always look out for me. Thanks to them, I'm living a very happy life.